Chapter 1738. Some big shots shuddered and felt a lingering fear in their hearts. Previously, they coveted Xia Xiaocheng's beauty and had indecent thoughts. They had been planning how to win over this little beauty of the Green Mountains, Celestial Fox clan. But who would have thought that such a little beauty had a close relationship with Lin Sun? It was true that Lin Sun was a great sage, but at the same time, he was also a decisive and peerless ruthless man who had set off countless bloody storms. It was absolutely no different from courting death to have an idea on the people around him. As for those young boys and girls who followed their elders, when they looked at Xia Xiaocheng, their mentality had changed. They no longer had the previous disdain, contempt and disregard. On the contrary, there was uncontrollable jealousy and envy surging in their hearts. Moreover, the attitudes of all the cultivators in the surroundings towards the young man in straw shoes carried a wisp of a subtle and complicated expression. Such a poor young man who was like an idiot actually had the luck to walk together with Xia Xiaocheng. In this way, how could he not attract the attention of Senior Lin Sun? Today, not only Miss Hu, but also I have reunited with Xia Xiaocheng after a long separation. It can be said to be double happiness. Come on, let's go in and talk. Lin Sun said with a smile. The little girl of the Green Mountains Celestial Fox clan is really beautiful. When she steps into the Saint Realm, her charm will be enough to fascinate all living beings and amaze the world. Hu commented with a smile. Lin Sun sneered, "This girl is a little silly girl." As he said, he waved to Xia Xiaocheng, "What are you doing? Come here quickly." Xia Xiaocheng said, "Oh," in a daze. Then she thought of something and pulled the sleeves of the boy in straw shoes next to her, saying, "And him, this is my friend. Can we go together?" Lin Sun glanced at the boy in straw shoes. At this moment, the boy in straw shoes was both excited and perturbed. He was so nervous that he didn't know where to put his hands and felt dizzy. How could he not know Lin Sun's name? A long time ago, his favorite thing was to enter the city, find a tea house with a storyteller, and listen to all kinds of rumors and deeds about Lin Sun. In the heart of the boy in straw shoes, Lin Sun was like a god, a legend far away in the sky. However, even he had never imagined that as soon as he arrived at the Sea of Star Chess, he would actually see Lin Sun with his own two eyes, a great figure that was the most formidable, miraculous, and extraordinary in his heart. Especially when Lin Sun looked at him, the boy in straw shoes was really confused, and his emotions fluctuated like a tide hitting the shore. "Then let's go together." Lin Sun smiled and withdrew his gaze. With his current experience, he could see many details at a glance, but he didn't ask much. "Brother Lin, you are the best. You are the same as before. At first, I thought you would change. I was worried for nothing." With a bright smile, Xia Xiaocheng came to Lin with the boy in straw shoes. Lin Sun rubbed the girl's head and said, "People change, as long as their hearts don't change. Let's go." With these words, Lin Sun was about to leave with Hu, Xia Xiaocheng, and the boy in straw shoes. "Senior Lin," Shui Yong suddenly shouted loudly. "Junior has bitterly waited here for many days, and I only wish to follow by your side to cultivate. I hope that you'll be merciful and fulfill my wish." With these words, he knelt on the ground and kowtowed incessantly. This proud and conceited teenager, who was regarded as the unicorn child of the Shui family, completely disregarded his face and dignity at this moment. He kowtowed on the ground with a pleading expression. This scene caused the youth in the straw sandals to be shocked once again. Xia Xiaocheng showed a touch of disgust. She wanted to say something, but she held back in the end. If she told Brother Lin about such a trivial matter, wouldn't it show that she was still as incompetent as before? That wouldn't do. "Did I ask you to wait here? You'd better not waste your time and go back." Lin Sun waved his sleeve and disappeared in the void with Hu and the others. From beginning to end, he didn't look at anyone else present. It wasn't that he ignored them, but he didn't bother to care or pay attention to them. Even if he wanted to take a disciple, he would never choose this way. You waited, you knelt, and you came with sincerity. But did I ask you to wait, kneel, and acknowledge me as your master? No. Above the star-chess sea, the mist spread like silk again. It was silent. Everyone was depressed. They sighed and shook their heads, sighed sadly, or felt bitter and lonely. But no one dared to speak rudely. This result was within their expectation. It could only be said that the disciples around them were not destined to be together. Only Shui Yong was the most embarrassed at this moment. He knelt on the ground, and his forehead was red and swollen, covered with dust. But Lin Sun didn't pay attention to him from beginning to end. He just waved his sleeve and floated away. Bitterness, annoyance, anger, and jealousy fermented in Shui Yong's heart like a tsunami. He couldn't help saying hoarsely, "This is unfair. Why can that idiot be taken away, but I can't? Just because of Xia Xiaochong?" The faces of everyone present changed, and they all turned their heads as if they didn't know Shui Yong. In fact, they had secretly decided to draw a clear line with Shui's in the future. This time, Shui Yong had offended both the boy in straw shoes and Xia Xiaochong. These two people might not be enough to make people afraid, but it would be different if they had some relationship with Lin Sun. If Lin Sun knew what Shui Yong had done in the future, would he also have a negative opinion of Shui's? And if the boy in straw shoes went to seek revenge from Shui's in the future, could Shui's bear it? Therefore, it was best to draw a clear line with Shui's. This was the cruelty of the world. Lin Sun didn't say anything from beginning to end, but no one present dared to ignore these things. "Shut up." Next to Shui Yong, the old saint of Shui's was livid. He grabbed Shui Yong and left in a hurry. He was angry, disappointed, and worried. Shui Yong's action of kneeling down to acknowledge Lin Sun as his teacher was quite out of line. If one insisted, there would only be two results. One was that he was lucky and succeeded. The other was that he was disgusted. Shui Yong obviously belonged to the latter. If so, it was not a big deal. With Lin Sun's current status and prestige, how could he care about a child? However, what Shui Yong said after being rejected was taboo. Although he didn't slander Lin Sun, everyone could hear the dissatisfaction and resentment in his words. This made the old saint feel angry and disappointed. Especially when he noticed that the other cultivators present had changed their attitude towards Shui Yong, the old saint felt a chill in his heart. He practically didn't even have to think to guess that these words were a hurdle that the Shui clan couldn't get over. After all, the news today would definitely spread quickly. After knowing that Shui Yong was rejected by Lin Sun and spoke angrily, who would dare to associate with Shui's clan? This was Lin Sun's power. Even if he didn't say a word, with his prestige in the ancient desolation realm, who in the world dared to disregard him? Thinking of this, the old saint of Shui's clan had the thought of slapping Shui Yong to death, and he felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Perhaps this was Shui Yong's punishment. If he didn't provoke Xia Xiaochong and the boy in straw shoes, if he didn't act so unscrupulously, how could this happen? On the island in the star-chess sea, waterfalls, flowing springs, green bamboos, and dense spiritual energy filled the air. It was like an immortal paradise. Lin Sun had long since taken this place as his residence in the ancient desolation realm. So, he'd opened up a medicinal garden, a spiritual spring, and planted many rare spiritual plants. With his current means and wealth, he could turn stone into gold with a flip of his hand, turning a deserted island into a top-notch blessed land. At this moment, Lin Sun had prepared a sumptuous banquet specially for Xia Xiaochong, and the boy in straw shoes who'd come from afar. The wine was aged and was sufficient to make a saint drool. The fruits were delicacies, and all of them were rare treasures in the world. Xia Xiaochong was the most carefree. His mouth was covered in grease, and coupled with his gluttony, he quickly got drunk and fell asleep at the table. The boy in straw shoes was probably the same. He was very reserved and perturbed, and he seemed to be in a trance as if he was dreaming. In particular, his cultivation was low. After drinking a cup of wine and eating a fruit, he couldn't resist the surging power all over his body, and his whole body became hot and red. Lin Sun felt ashamed. He'd forgotten that the boy in straw shoes couldn't bear the power contained in such delicious wine at all. He patted the boy in straw shoes lightly, and a stream of power passed to him, suppressing the power running wild in his body. Seeing that the boy in straw shoes also fell asleep like Xia Xiaochong, Lin Sun turned his eyes to Miss Hu opposite him, who picked up a cup of wine with a smile and looked at Xia Xiaochong with her beautiful eyes, saying, "This little girl is also a fox like me. But she's from the Green Hill Fox clan, with an extraordinary bloodline and a powerful background. As for me, I'm the most common white fox." This was the first time that Hu had talked about her origin. In Lin Sun's impression, this woman, who was as beautiful as a fairy and as charming as a demon, was an extremely mysterious figure. Who would have thought that she was the most common white fox in the world? You definitely won't believe it, but it's too complicated to explain. In a word, the reason why I can have what I have today is, well, a lucky chance. Hu didn't say anything else after that. But Lin Sun was clear that the lucky chance that enabled Hu to have today's background and power with the body of an ordinary white fox was bound to be extraordinary. As for this boy, he's interesting. Hu looked at the youth in straw sandals, and her watery eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Within his body there is an incomplete sword bone. He should have been injured when he was young, and it damaged the origin of his body. Otherwise, such a boy with a natural sword bone would have shown his extraordinary talent long ago, and all the orthodoxies in the world would scramble to accept him as a disciple. Natural sword bone. Lin Sun suddenly stopped holding the cup, and a frightening light flashed in his dark eyes. He thought of a person, a peerless swordsman who was born in a poor family and had a natural sword bone, Yun Qin Bai. Chapter 1740. Inborn sword bone is too rare. Even on the ancient way of the starry sky, such a talent is regarded as a first-class sacred talent. Anyone with such a talent is often regarded as the darling of swordsmanship. As long as he doesn't die prematurely, it's not difficult for him to become a king or a sage. Even if he becomes an emperor, he will have more advantages than other strong people. Listening to Hu's melodious voice, Lin Sun stared blankly at the sleeping lad in straw shoes who was bent over the table, his heart filled with complicated feelings. Yun Qi Bai was also a poor boy in a village, but he was targeted by Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi from the northern underworld ancient region because of his inborn sword bone. From then on, Yun Qi Bai embarked on a path of no return where he could not control his own life. Lin Sun still remembered what Yun Qi Bai said in a serious tone before he died. "In fact, we are the same kind of people, but you have a choice, while I have no choice." Yes, inborn sword bone was world-shocking. He was regarded as the first sword practitioner of the younger generation in the ancient Desolation territory. But Lin Sun, who knew the truth, knew that Yun Qi Bai was forced to cultivate at the beginning. Now, another boy with sword bone appeared. Different from Yun Qi Bai, who was targeted by Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi, the boy in straw shoes met Lin Sun. As if it was predestined, Yun Qi Bai was killed by Lin Sun, and another boy like Yun Qi Bai appeared in front of him many years later. "By the way, you said that his sword bone is incomplete?" Lin Sun asked suddenly. Hu nodded and sighed faintly. This youth should have suffered an injury when he was still an infant, causing his complete sword bone to have many cracks. Originally, inborn sword bone could be regarded as a sacred talent, but it is very likely to be accompanied by great hidden dangers in future cultivation, which is a disaster rather than a blessing. Lin Sun's expression was slightly strange. "What's wrong with you?" Hu keenly noticed that Lin Sun's mood was a little strange. Lin Sun drank a glass of wine and kept silent for a moment, then said, "Like him, my talent was also destroyed when I was still a baby, but my talent was taken by the enemy. Comparatively speaking, this boy is lucky." Speaking of this, Lin Sun was in a trance. This young man in straw sandals was really too interesting. He had the same background and talent as Yun Qingbai, but he also had some experiences that were quite similar to his own when he was young. Otherwise, Lin Sun's mood wouldn't be fluctuating like this at this time. Ahu said with a smile, "In that case, this young man is quite fated with you. Why don't you take this opportunity to take him as your disciple?" Lin Sun was stunned and lost in thought. Perhaps the talent of the youth in straw shoes was damaged, but it was not impossible to repair. If he embarked on the path of cultivation, would he become another Yun Qingbai? A Yun Qingbai with a choice? In the end, Lin Sun decided to have a talk with the straw shoes boy after he woke up. "By the way, you said that innate sword bone is a saint grade talent. How is this categorized?" asked Lin Sun. Ahu said casually, "On the starry sky ancient path, the gifted powers of the heavens and earth are divided into 5 categories: Earth, Heaven, King, Mystic, and Saint. Earth rank talent is the lowest, and Saint rank talent is the highest. Among the hundreds of millions of cultivators in the ancient Desolation realm, there are many elites with Earth grade talents, and many with Heaven grade talents. But there are very few people with King grade talent. They are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Over the years, I have learned a lot about the ancient Desolation realm. I roughly know that the core descendants of those ancient orthodoxies, who are regarded as peerless talents by the world, almost all have King grade talents. Mystic grade talents are geniuses born with the luck of heaven and earth. They are 1 in a million and are regarded as the favored children of God. Most of the ancient freaks who have been silent for thousands of years and awakened in this world are like this. As for the saint rank talent, it is rare even in the starry sky. Such people are few and far between ancient and modern times. It is said that on the starry sky ancient path, some ancient Taoist court have mastered the method to judge the saint rank talent. As for whether it is true or not, no one knows. After hearing this, Lin Sun suddenly understood. Earth, Heaven, King, Mystic, Saint. This was only for the cultivators with gifted powers. But in the whole world, there were only a few cultivators with gifted powers. For example, when Lin Sun first cultivated in the bloodthirsty camp in the mortal world, he had taken a talent test, but the standard was very vague at that time. In Xiao Empire, there were only 9 grades of talent. The first grade was the highest, and the 9th grade was the lowest. It was quite rough and far less clear than what Ahu said. But Lin Sun was surprised that inborn sword bone could be evaluated as a saint rank talent. He also realized how great Yun Qingbai's talent was. In fact, having talent is only a kind of congenital advantage in the pursuit of Tao. 99% of the cultivators in the world are not born with talent. But among these people, there are also many legendary figures. Ahu said, "In short, talent is just a kind of talent. In the pursuit of Tao, the most important thing is the disposition." Lin Sun had experienced a lot of things in the world over the years and had rich experience. As a great sage, he naturally knew that the disposition mentioned by Ahu was indeed the most important thing in cultivation. Some people had amazing talent, but their disposition was too poor, and they could not go far on the road of Tao. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Like you, Miss Ahu, it is a good proof that even if you have no talent, you can still achieve extraordinary achievements on the Tao." "Brother Lin, you flatter me." Ahu smiled sweetly. Her temperament was as beautiful as a fairy and as charming as a demon, which was enough to make the world dim. She said, "If Brother Lin is interested in the power of talent, you might as well pay attention to the Starry Sky talent list, after you go to the Starry Sky ancient path. It lists the names and origins of the most famous 5 grades of Earth, Heaven, King, Mystic and Saint since ancient times." Starry Sky talent list. Lin Sun was surprised. There seemed to be many lists on the Starry Sky ancient path, such as Starry Sky Beauty list, Starry Sky True Sage list, Starry Sky Great Sage list. Ahu smiled lightly, revealing her red lips and pearly white teeth. It's very simple. These lists are all collected and compiled by the Black-Yellow Taoist Court, one of the 6 major Taoist courts. With the influence of the Black-Yellow Taoist Court, these lists are also popular in the starry sky and are regarded as the standard by all the practitioners in the world. Hearing this, Lin Sun had already made a judgment in his heart. Ahu, the mysterious and beautiful woman, was very likely to have entered the starry sky ancient path. Otherwise, how could she be so familiar with the things on the starry sky ancient path? Ahu stopped smiling and looked solemn and ethereal. She said, "Brother Lin, the entrance of Kunlun ruins will appear again in less than half a year. I came here for that." Lin Sun nodded, took out a flying immortal token and handed it to Ahu. "This is your token. Fortunately, I didn't fail you." Ahu accepted the flying immortal token and said, "Back then in the bloodthirsty battlefield, I once said that as long as Brother Lin helps me with this, regardless of whether it succeeds or not, I'll give Brother Lin something. It's enough for Brother Lin to obtain an unexpected benefit after entering the Kunlun ruins." Lin Sun was speechless. "I never thought about this when I helped you." Ahu said, "Brother Lin, don't refuse it. You can't guess it." As she said, she turned over her palm, and a strand of snow-white hair-like thing appeared, emitting a misty Taoist rhyme. It was just a strand of snow-white silk, but just a glance at it made Lin Sun feel a kind of vast, ancient and mysterious aura. Ahu's beautiful eyes carried a hint of meaningfulness as she said softly, "This is a strand of horsetail whisk silk. It's related to a forbidden area in the Kunlun ruins, and it's also related to your master, Brother Lin." "Master?" Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed, and he immediately thought of Mind Mountain. A strand of horsetail whisk silk not only involved a forbidden area in the Kunlun ruins, but also had a connection with his master. This was certainly unusual. However, what surprised Lin Sun even more was that Ahu seemed to have seen through his master long ago. "Don't be suspicious, Lin Sun. When we met for the first time in the Soul Oblivion Sea outside the Ultimate Ruins, I recognized the aura of Battle Saint method from you. That's why I took the initiative to meet you and gave you the Vast Universe Arc to help you leave the Soul Oblivion Sea safely." Ahu picked up a cup of wine, took a sip, and said in a clear voice, "As for why I did this, it's not convenient for me to tell you for the time being. I hope you can forgive me." Lin Sun said helplessly, "I owe you so much. I have no choice but to forgive you." Ahu couldn't help smiling charmingly. "Anyway, you and I will not be enemies. Just remember this." After saying that, she stretched and stood up, saying, "Brother Lin, you have to make good preparations before going to the Kunlun ruins. If you want to return to the ancient Desolation Realm in the future, well, it will be very difficult." "What do you mean?" Lin Sun also stood up. "The exit of the Kunlun ruins leads to the Starry Sky ancient path," Ahu said with a smile. "You know." After saying that, she floated up and turned into a rain of light, disappearing in the void. "Brother Lin, I will come to meet you before the Kunlun ruins opens." Her voice was as clear as a gurgling spring, as beautiful as the sounds of nature. The mysterious woman in the yellow dress had long disappeared. Lin Sun stood in silence for a moment, and then returned to the table, drinking and drinking by himself. He couldn't get rid of Ahu's figure in his mind. It was not because of love, but the feeling this woman gave him was like a dense fog, mysterious and difficult to see through. In the end, Lin Sun restrained his mind, and his black eyes were clear and calm. The next morning, the young man in straw shoes woke up from his sleep and opened his eyes. He felt relaxed and happy, and his whole body was indescribably refreshed. "You're awake?" A warm and peaceful voice sounded. The young man in straw shoes looked up and saw Lin Sun sitting in front of a table, looking at him with a smile not far away. The young man in straw shoes suddenly stood up. He completely woke up from his sleep and realized that he was in the Star Chess Sea. Chapter 1742. The boy in straw shoes was very reserved, nervous, and perturbed. He was dressed in coarse clothes and a pair of straw shoes, but his whole body was quite clean and tidy. His skin was a little dark, but his eyes were bright and full of spirit. Sit down. It's fate that we meet. Can you tell me about your previous life? Lin Sun smiled and spoke in a warm and peaceful voice, calming the mind of the boy in straw shoes. Like a spring breeze, he sat down. After thinking for a while, he told Lin Sun about his past in a clear and organized way. The boy's name was Su Bai, 13 years old. He came from a remote village in Shiheng Boundary, where his family had been farming for generations. Some time ago, the village was attacked by a beast tide, and Su Bai's parents were unfortunately killed by the fierce beasts. After understanding this, a trace of emotion appeared in Lin Sun's eyes. Su Bai. This name reminded him of Yun Qinbai again. The boy in straw shoes named Su Bai was extremely nervous at the moment. He vaguely understood, and his eyes were filled with uncontrollable anticipation. Lin Sun gazed at the boy and said, "There was a person very similar to you in the past, but he was always forced to embark on the road of cultivation, so his life was full of tragedies." Su Bai was startled and could not help saying, "Senior, I'm different from him." Lin Sun asked, "What's the difference?" Su Bai took a deep breath and said seriously, If I can follow you to cultivate, I'll only be happy, and no one can force me to do anything." Lin Sun smiled. This was a very smart boy. "Why do you want to cultivate?" Lin Sun spoke again. "I'll only give you 3 chances. If your answers satisfy me, I'll give you a chance to be my apprentice." Su Bai's spirit was refreshed, and his whole body trembled with joy and excitement. But soon, he took a few deep breaths, trying to calm himself down, and did not rush to speak. He knew that this was a test from Lin Sun. If he answered well, he could jump over the dragon gate and soar to the sky. If he answered poorly, he would still be the useless person who could only watch his parents suffer in front of the fierce beasts, and could only be angry but unable to do anything about it. Why do I want to cultivate? Su Bai began to think, and his eyes were in a trance as he remembered many things. He thought of his parents working hard since he was young, but they were still troubled by poverty and diseases. He recalled the extraordinary abilities of those cultivators that the storyteller spoke of. They could move mountains and fill seas, and they seemed to possess omnipotent abilities. He also thought of the beast tide that brought him immense pain. He thought of the scene where he was mocked by Shuiyong at the shore of the Sea of Stars. Shuiyong once said, "Even if you don't have talent, it doesn't matter if you work hard all the time. There is no lack of idiots with ambitions higher than the heavens in this world. Every one of them thinks that hard work can make up for their lack of talent, and that the heavenly Tao rewards the diligent. But in the end, they still fade into the crowd, and are far from being able to compare with other cultivators. This is the great Tao, and it has always been this cruel. For those with poor talent to want to go against the heavens and change their fate, it is absolutely wishful thinking." Suddenly, an incomparably strong impulse welled up in the youth's heart. He wanted to express his cultivation vision. But when he saw Lin Sun's calm and deep eyes, he suddenly sobered up and suppressed the strong impulse. In the past, there was hatred, anger, sadness, and sorrow. However, it was all in the past and could not be changed. In this case, if he wanted to cultivate in the future, he must not only be trapped in the past. Thinking of this, Su Bai broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that if he had impulsively said the answer just now, Senior Lin Sun would definitely be very disappointed. Then, the youth in straw shoes fell into meditation again. The more he thought about it, the more chaotic his thoughts became. In a trance, he did not know the passage of time. Lin Sun did not disturb him, and quietly got up and left. "Xiaochong, why do you think of coming to see me?" Lin Sun found Xia Xiaochong on the edge of a cliff. This pure and innocent girl, who was as pure as glass, seemed to have not grown up for long and still maintained her appearance in the past. But compared with the past, the girl's appearance was a little less immature and a little more beautiful. Ah? It occurred to me that I haven't seen you for a long time, so I came here. Xia Xiaochong looked confused, thinking that this question was too strange. Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help laughing. Yes, she came as she pleased. Did she have to come here for some purpose at all costs? This was Xia Xiaochong. She did whatever she wanted, and her mind was flawless. On the contrary, she was close to the Great Way and was in line with her heart. If I don't come, will you come to find me? Xia Xiaochong asked. Lin Sun was speechless for a while. Of course, he could say yes, but in the face of such a sincere and kind girl, he did not want to be perfunctory. After thinking for a while, he sighed softly. Yes, but not now, and I'm not sure when, probably. Xia Xiaochong said happily in a crisp voice, as long as you know. Lin Sun felt ashamed. He even envied this clean and beautiful girl, who was like a sunflower, giving people a beautiful atmosphere. The reason why he envied her was that he couldn't do it. He still had many things to do. Although his Taoist heart was unparalleled, it had already experienced hardships and was no longer as simple as before. Lin Sun said gently, Since you're here, have some fun here. I'll send you back when you miss home. Xia Xiaochong blinked her eyes, and her clear eyes were full of smiles. Brother Lin, you're the best to me. As long as you don't mind, I'll always be good to you in the future. Lin Sun laughed. Chatting with Xia Xiaochong made him feel extremely relaxed and happy. For 3 days, the boy in straw shoes had been thinking about the question raised by Lin Sun. He frowned, his face was pale, and he looked both mentally and physically exhausted. Elder brother, this question is too difficult. This little guy hasn't started cultivating yet. How can he say the words of touching the heart and seeking the truth? Alu, who had been paying attention to Su Bai's movements in the dark, could not help but ask. Lin Sun's eyes were full of inscrutable meaning. He said, Once a child from a poor family encounters an opportunity to change his fate, even if it's only a glimmer of hope, he will try his best to grasp it in his hands. Some are even stubborn enough to sacrifice their lives for it. On the contrary, those from rich families won't be like this, because they don't have to worry about their future cultivation at all. Someone has already arranged everything for them. This is the gap of birth. Among millions of poor people in this world, how many can stand out in the end? Even if they can stand out, there's still a big gap between them and those from famous families in terms of future prospects and foundation. After a pause, Lin Sun continued, Take this boy for example. If he wasn't born in a poor family, why would he work so hard for a chance to cultivate? Similarly, since he wants to change his fate, he has to make extraordinary efforts from the first step of seeking Tao. Otherwise, he is doomed to vanish into the crowd in the future. Alu scratched his head and said, Elder brother, with your current strength, won't he have a meteoric rise in the future if you give him some pointers casually? Lin Sun sneered. If so, I'd rather not take him as an apprentice. Since I've decided to take him as an apprentice, I should be responsible for his future cultivation. I don't want my apprentice to live on my prestige in the future. Alu said with a strange look, But it's too difficult for him to be your apprentice without being influenced by your prestige. If he doesn't make thousands of times more efforts, he may live in your shadow for the rest of his life. Lin Sun said, That's why I asked him that question. Only by figuring it out and understanding it thoroughly can he not be influenced by me in the future. It seems that you've made up your mind to take this boy as your apprentice. Alu was surprised. Lin Sun nodded and said, At first, I wanted to see if he would become the second Yunqi Bai, but now I just want him to be himself, a unique Yunqi Bai. Speaking of this, Lin Sun smiled and said, Of course, now he has passed my test. Passed? Alu was stunned. Senior, do you mean I've passed? Su Bai was woken up by Lin Sun, but he had not come up with a satisfactory answer from beginning to end. But Lin Sun told him that it was enough. This caused him to be at a loss. Lin Sun smiled and explained, I won't be satisfied if you give me any answer. Because that's only what you think now. When you step onto the path of cultivation and your strength grows stronger and stronger, this thought will change along with it. He paused for a moment and continued. I only hope that when you encounter bewilderment, perplexity, or even tribulation in the future, ask yourself why you started cultivating in the first place. At that time, you'll have the answer in your heart. Su Bai's head buzzed as if he suddenly understood, but when he thought about it carefully, he still couldn't figure it out. Lin Sun patted the boy's slightly thin shoulder and said in a gentle voice, This question is one of the reasons why you seek the road of cultivation. When one day you thoroughly understand and see through it, you will understand. Su Bai was stunned, but he still realized that he had been recognized by Lin Sun. The problems he couldn't understand now would eventually be solved in the future. Now, you just passed my test, but it's up to you whether I will accept you as my apprentice. Lin Sun looked solemn and said calmly. Su Bai knelt on the ground and kowtowed, saying devoutly and firmly, Senior, please enlighten me. Lin Sun said, In the next period of time, I will teach you the most basic cultivation tips and give you the secret method of cultivation. But before you get my approval, you can't claim to be my disciple, which means that what you do in the future has nothing to do with me. If I find out that you act under my banner, I will deprive you of your cultivation and make you unable to turn over forever. Do you understand? These words, like a sound of Tao, knocked on Su Bai's heart, grand and majestic. Su Bai was silent for a long time and finally said firmly, I understand. On this day, Lin Sun, who already had the cultivation of the great saint realm, accepted Su Bai, a poor teenager in straw shoes, as a registered disciple. Before Su Bai was officially recognized by Lin Sun, this matter was destined to be unknown to everyone except a few people. Chapter 1744. Time flew by day. Su Bai was unaware of it. Since Lin Sun decided to accept him as a registered disciple that day, he had taught him the most basic secret method of cultivation and spent a day explaining its mysteries to him. Since then, Su Bai had been cultivating alone. It seemed that Lin Sun was very irresponsible, but only Ah Lu knew that it was because his elder brother cared about Su Bai, a registered disciple. It was so that Su Bai could walk alone on the Great Way without being affected by Lin Sun. Indeed, Su Bai did not let Lin Sun down. The boy in straw shoes might have suffered too much in the past, but after obtaining such an opportunity to cultivate, he was extremely diligent and hard-working. He ate, slept, and walked. He was thinking and comprehending the secrets of cultivation. The most striking thing was that Su Bai was extremely self-disciplined and would not deliberately cultivate desperately. He would also arrange time for himself to empty his mind and rest his physical strength. This boy is really smart. He knows the truth that more haste, less speed, especially in cultivation. You can't force it, but you have to strive for it. The way to use it depends on one's heart. This boy has mastered it without a teacher and is well versed in it. Not bad, not bad. Old Toad was originally not interested in such a boy in straw shoes. He even thought that, with Lin Sun's current reputation, even if he accepted a disciple, he should accept a first-class peerless genius in the world. When he learned that Lin Sun had accepted the boy in straw shoes as a registered disciple, Old Toad could not believe it. But now, he vaguely understood. On the road of cultivation, talent might be very important, but a person's temperament was the route to determine whether he could walk on the Great Way for a long time. The boy in straw shoes' temperament, perseverance, and disposition were indeed very good. It's a pity that no matter how good his temperament is, his talent is still damaged. Compared with his peers in this world, he's completely inconspicuous. I really don't know if your elder brother is out of his mind to accept such a little guy as a disciple. The big blackbird laughed. It was not laughing at the boy in straw shoes, but taking the opportunity to ridicule Lin Sun, thinking that he was too reckless in accepting a disciple. "You thief bird, you know nothing!" Alu immediately retorted and argued with the big black bird. Lin Sun was indifferent to this, as if he had completely made up his mind to let the boy in straw shoes cultivate alone and would no longer interfere in his cultivation. Soon, more than a month had passed. On this day, Xia Xiaochong suddenly decided to leave. Seeing how hard Su Bai was cultivating, she should also work hard. Otherwise, it would be too shameful if Su Bai caught up to her in cultivation in the future. Only Xia Xiaochong could think of such a refreshing and unique excuse to bid farewell. Lin Sun could not help laughing, but he did not force Xia Xiaochong to stay. On the same day, he took Xia Xiaochong away from the Star Chess Sea. With Lin Sun's current cultivation, it only took him half a day to come to the place where the Green Hills Celestial Fox lived, the place called Green Hills Mountain. Back then, he had brought Xia Xiaochong and safely brought her to this place. "Brother Lin, go back quickly." Under the afterglow of the setting sun, Xia Xiaochong, dressed in a plain dress, stood prettily amidst the flowers on the mountain. Her small face was pure and beautiful, and she was smiling sweetly. Her slender figure was covered with a layer of magnificent sunset glow. "Xiaochong, I may leave the ancient desolation realm for a period of time soon. Take this thing with you. If you encounter any danger, just crush it." Lin Sun handed Xia Xiaochong a jade token that he had already prepared. The token was branded with his will. In the ancient desolation realm, it was enough to play a great deterrent role. "Oh!" Xia Xiaochong did not refuse. She happily put away the token, and her eyes were shining. She said, "Brother Lin, you must take care of yourself in the future." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Of course. Then I'll go back first." Xia Xiaochong waved her hand and turned to go up the mountain. Her steps were light and lively, and her back outlined a touch of moving brightness in the setting sun. However, when she arrived in front of the mountain gate where the Green Hills Celestial Fox lived, the smile on Xia Xiaochong's face gradually disappeared, and a touch of sadness lingered between her brows. She sighed faintly in her heart, and as if she had made a decision, she resolutely stepped into the mountain gate. "Xiaochong, you're finally back." As soon as she entered the mountain gate, an angry voice sounded, and a silver-haired old woman appeared out of thin air and stared coldly at Xia Xiaochong. "Ninth aunt." Xia Xiaochong lowered her head and said, Do you still care about me, the ninth aunt? Do you think you can be lawless now that you've grown up?" The silver-haired old woman snorted coldly. Xia Xiaochong shook her head and said, "I just don't want to get married, but you have to do it anyway. So I went out to relax." The silver-haired old woman was about to say something when a group of men and women flashed over from afar. All of them were the big shots of the Green Hills Celestial Fox. When they saw Xia Xiaochong, they couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. A while ago, as the elders, they had arranged a marriage for Xia Xiaochong and betrothed her to a core disciple of the ancient orthodoxy Emergence Sword Sect. The Emergence Sword Sect was a colossus in the West Hung world. Being able to marry a core disciple of such an orthodoxy, the Green Hills Celestial Fox could be protected and benefit from it. In the eyes of anyone, this was an extremely joyous occasion. However, Xia Xiaochong had rejected it and even sneaked away. This had infuriated the entire Green Hills Celestial Fox clan. They didn't know how to explain this matter to the Emergence Sword Sect. Fortunately, Xia Xiaochong had returned. Ninth aunt Xia Xiaochong has returned. She must have realized her mistake. Please don't blame her. Yes, the most important thing now is to prepare for Xia Xiaochong's marriage. She has made a great contribution to the Green Hills Celestial Fox clan. She must be rewarded. The big shots chimed in one after another. Some of the women were even jealous. A stupid girl like Xia Xiaochong had actually caught the eye of a core disciple of the Emergence Sword Sect. Her status would no longer be the same in the future. Was this what they meant by fortune favoring fools? Xiaochong, don't blame ninth aunt. I'm doing this for your own good. The silver-haired old woman's expression softened. Xia Xiaochong, who had been silent with her head lowered, suddenly raised her head. Her clear eyes were filled with tears as she said, You're not doing this for my own good. You're clearly doing this for your own good. You all think I'm stupid, but I'm not. I just don't want to quarrel with you. I've come back this time to tell you that I've thought it through. I'd rather die than get married. If you continue to force me, I'll never come back. Her words caused the faces of the big shots, including the silver-haired old woman, to darken. Xia Xiaochong, how dare you? Someone rebuked angrily. Nonsense. Do you still have any respect for us elders? We've betrothed you to a Mr. Right out of kindness, but you actually think that we're up to no good? Someone said coldly. You're indeed the same as your mother, Lin Wenjun. When she was young, she disregarded all objections and eloped with a wild man with the surname Xia. Now, don't tell me you're also with someone else? Someone said viciously. In an instant, all kinds of reprimands and sarcastic remarks were directed at Xia Xiaochong. Xia Xiaochong's beautiful little face was already filled with tears. She was so angry that her entire body was trembling. My father is not a wild man. My mother is not as unbearable as you say. Everyone just sneered. Xia Xiaochong felt a chill run down her entire body. Are these my relatives and friends? Today is my birthday. My mother once said that my father would come back to pick me up today. Xia Xiaochong took a deep breath and forcefully endured the sense of loss and sorrow in her heart. I'll never come back in the future. Your father? If that wild man wants to pick you up, then why would he wait until now? Someone sneered. Xiaochong, I think you should stay here obediently. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the silver-haired old woman, and she raised her hand to grab Xia Xiaochong's shoulder. Xia Xiaochong was the key to the marriage alliance between the Heavenly Fox clan and the Ascension Sword sect, so how could they allow Xia Xiaochong to leave just like that? Xia Xiaochong was stunned. She seemed to have never imagined that her relatives would actually be so heartless and cruel in order to make her stay. But in the next moment, the silver-haired old woman let out a shrill cry and knelt on the ground. At the same time, a tall figure appeared before Xia Xiaochong. Surprisingly, it was Lin Sun. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you trespass? Someone was furious. But before he could finish his words, his body seemed to be oppressed by a divine mountain. He knelt on the ground with a bang and could no longer raise his head. Everyone else was covered in goosebumps and revealed a look of horror. How terrifying! Who was this person? All of you kneel down too. Lin Sun's dark eyes were cold as he glanced at the crowd. As his gaze swept across, all the bigwigs of the Heavenly Fox clan present, regardless of their cultivation, knelt on the ground one by one. From the beginning to the end, they didn't even have a chance to resist. They opened their mouths to scream, but they couldn't even make a sound. As for Lin Sun, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. Looking at Xia Xiaochong, whose face was covered with tears, he couldn't help feeling sorry for her and said, Well, it's all right now. Xia Xiaochong opened her eyes wide and said in disbelief, Brother Lin Sun, didn't you already leave? Lin Sun rubbed her little head and said, Silly girl, when we were in the Star Chess Sea, I saw that you had something on your mind. Do you think you're so smart that you can hide it from others? It was because he saw that Xia Xiaochong had something on her mind that Lin Sun personally went out and escorted this girl all the way home. But even Lin Sun didn't expect that Xia Xiaochong's worry was related to a hated marriage. Xia Xiaochong bowed her head in embarrassment. I just don't want to worry you. And I thought they would let me go. Lin Sun patted Xia Xiaochong on the shoulder and said, Come with me. It's not suitable for you to stay here any longer. Xia Xiaochong shook her head and said, Brother Lin Sun, my mother said that my father would come to pick me up today. I've been looking forward to my father's arrival since I was a child. I still want to see what my father looks like. Really? Lin Sun was stunned. Of course it's true. At this moment there were two answers to Lin Sun. One was from Xia Xiaochong, and the girl answered without hesitation. The other was as warm as wine and as warm as the wind. Chapter 1745. It was a thin man with broad eyebrows, white hair at the temples, and a trace of vicissitudes in his eyes. He was dressed in cyan clothes, with a yellow-skinned gourd hanging around his waist. He looked unrestrained and unruly. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. When the man appeared, he didn't notice it at all. So similar, so similar. As soon as he arrived, the man's eyes fell on Xia Xiaochong. His eyes were in a trance with a complicated look. Xia Xiaochong's mind went blank. Although she was pure in mind, she was not stupid. A thought came to her mind at the first moment. He was her father? Xiaochong, I'm sorry. I didn't come to see you until today, the man said with a voice full of guilt and a little hoarse. In his eyes, with vicissitudes of life, tears flashed. Xia Xiaochong hesitated. Are you really my father? The man felt sad and nodded. I, Xia Xinglie, will never mistake my own flesh and blood. Xiaochong, he seemed to be very excited, but he seemed to notice something wrong and glanced at Lin Sun. Just a glance made Lin Sun's body cold, and he instinctively had a strong sense of danger. My little friend, can you leave us alone for a while? The man's voice was mellow. The lingering sense of danger disappeared. Lin Sun glanced at Xia Xiaochong and said, I need a reason. A reason? The man was surprised, and then he said with relief, I can see that you really want to protect me. I won't force you. With a snap of his fingers, a broken crescent-shaped jade pendant appeared. Xia Xiaochong took out an identical jade pendant and said excitedly, My mother said that when my father came to pick me up, he would take out the other half of the jade pendant. She seemed to want to admit it, but she didn't dare to. The man felt a wave of guilt and bitterness in his heart. Seeing this, Lin Sun quietly retreated. Outside Qingqiu Mountain, the setting sun shone. Lin Sun sat lazily on a rock, drinking alone. He thought of his parents, Lin Wenjing and Luo Qingxuan. After a long time, Xia Xinglie, dressed in cyan, with white hair on his temples, appeared beside Lin Sun. Thank you, little friend. Xia Xinglie said softly, Little Worm has already told me some things about you. If he has offended you earlier, please forgive him. Lin Sun stood up and shook his head. It's my duty. It's a good thing for me to meet you. When he spoke up to hear, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, Where are the others? You mean Little Worm's relatives? Yes. Xia Hanglai casually said, They made a mistake, so they should be punished. Punishment? Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. Don't worry. After all, they are Little Worm's family. How could I possibly be cruel to them? I just imprison them all and let them reflect on their actions. Xia Xinglie's voice was warm and mellow. Standing under the setting sun, his figure seemed to be bathed in a layer of mysterious light, making it impossible to see through him. He gazed at Lin Sun as if he'd seen through Lin Sun, and he said, Young brother, the ancient desolation region isn't suitable for you to stay any longer. If you're willing, I can take you with me. Where to? The starry sky ancient path. Xia Hanglai had thought that Lin Sun would surely reveal some surprise and happiness, but none of this happened. This young man, who could only be regarded as a junior in his eyes, seemed to be very calm and composed, and this calmness couldn't be faked at all. Thank you for your kindness, senior. Lin Sun refused. Xia Hanglai was stunned. He seemed to have never expected that his kindness would actually be refused by a junior. After that, he smiled light-heartedly and said, Young brother, have you heard of the 6 major Dao courts? Lin Sun nodded. Of course he had heard of them. Amongst the most famous top powers on the ancient path of the starry sky, the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 warring clans were the most prosperous and famous, and their might shook the entire universe. Xia Hanglai said, I, Xia Hanglai, am not being modest. If you're willing, I can introduce you to any of the Tao courts to cultivate. Lin Sun was shocked. He was even more certain that Little Worm's father was absolutely an extraordinary figure on the ancient path of the starry sky. I'm sorry. Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Lin Sun refused in the end. He never lacked inheritances. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reacted like that when he faced the Skirich Lord's strand of willpower. Xia Hanglai frowned, and he couldn't help but take another glance at Lin Sun. After a short while, he couldn't help but laugh in self-ridicule and shake his head. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, Senior, if you want to thank me on behalf of Little Worm, you don't have to. I regard Little Worm as my younger sister, and I've never coveted anything in return for doing something for her. Xia Hanglai couldn't help but laugh, and he nodded and said, I understand. I wasn't considerate earlier. However, you must accept this token. Otherwise, Little Worm will definitely resent me as her father in the future. He flipped his palm, and a verdant token that was shaped like a bamboo slip floated up into appearance. Lin Sun thought for a moment, and then he took the token and said, Then I'll respectfully accept it. Only now did Xia Hanglai laugh heartily. He took off the yellow wine gourd at his waist and drank to his heart's content, and then he smacked his lips and said, Awesome! Today is the happiest day of my life. Young brother, let's part ways here. So long as you head to the ancient path of the starry sky, we'll definitely meet again. After that, he rose from the ground and soared into the sky. At this moment, the rules of heaven and earth suddenly became violent, as if they couldn't tolerate the figure that was about to break through the sky and leave. Boom! Xia Xinglia burst out laughing and took a step forward. A giant hole appeared in the sky above him. Lin Sun gasped. Xia Xiaochong's father was too fierce, wasn't he? What did it mean to pierce through the sky? That was it. Almost at the same time, a corner of Yuhua Mountain, which was regarded as the holy land of cultivation by countless cultivators, suddenly collapsed. The Ascension Sword sect that resided on the Divine Mountain were all alarmed and shocked. A core disciple who was cultivating in the Ascension Sword sect had died on the spot without a sound. Blood flowed out of his body, gathered on the ground, and turned into a line of bloody words. Death penalty! Thousands of miles away, while talking and laughing, Xia Xiaochong had already killed someone and left a letter. Such means were undoubtedly like those of the gods in the legend. Xia Hanglai left, ignoring the rules of the ancient Desolation territory. He broke through the sky and left. Xia Xiaochong and the imprisoned members of the Qingqiu Heavenly Foxes also left with him. Until the order of heaven and earth returned to peace, Lin Sun's turbulent emotions gradually calmed down. He opened the green bamboo-like message talisman in his palm, and there was a Taoist rune on it that was wantonly and ostentatious. Xia. It was just a word, but it was like an emperor descending to the ninth heaven. It was faintly discernible, and had the meaning of shocking the universe and looking down on all directions. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep and his expression was strange. A thought kept popping up in his mind. Xia Xiaochong's father should at least be a great emperor. Thinking that he had repeatedly refused the kindness of a suspected great emperor, Lin Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Who would have thought that such a pure and innocent girl as Xia Xiaochong's father was such a fierce existence? No wonder he said that I could choose any of the 6 Tao courts. It turns out that he was not bragging, and he was qualified to say so. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Above the sky, within Zhou Su, there was a vast starry sky with billions of stars twinkling and flowing in it. Clatter Xia Xinglia's figure appeared. He walked in the starry sky, and the aura around him began to rise steadily. Wherever he passed, the starry sky trembled and the void roared. In the end, his figure was like a supreme ruler, and the terrifying and boundless willpower covered the starry sky. Greetings, Your Excellency! Greetings, Your Excellency! In the starry sky, pious, fanatical, and respectful voices sounded one after another. There seemed to be numerous phantoms that seemed like fiend gods faintly appearing in the sky, and they were bowing their heads in submission to Xia Xinglie. Give the order that I will hold a banquet in the Nine Heavens Palace of the Great Path 100 days later to celebrate the reunion of us father and daughter. Xia Xinglie's voice rumbled and surged in all directions. Yes. Yes. In next to no time, numerous voices received their orders and vanished amidst the boundless universe void. Xia Xinglie was talking to Xia Xiaochong. Xiaochong, I've let you down in the past, but from now on, I'll make you the most dazzling star in this starry sky. Father, I don't want to be a star. Xia Xiaochong's voice was tender and clear. Xia Xinglie was stunned, and then he couldn't help but laugh. He nodded and said, Okay. You can do whatever you want. In any case, I'll listen to you. Xia Xiaochong said happily, Father, will you stop me if I want to play with Brother Lin in the future? Xia Xinglie's mood suddenly became complicated. It was such a happy thing for him to meet his daughter, but his daughter was still thinking about playing with that kid. Of course not. Xia Xinglie thought for a while and said. He started to think quickly in his heart. He must treat his daughter 1,000 times better in the future, and he must let her know that his father was the best man in the world. That's good. Xia Xiaochong smiled happily, and her pure little face was full of a brilliant smile. She seemed to have begun to look forward to the next meeting with Lin. This made Xia Xinglie a little jealous. That kid was just a great sage. Was he better than her father? If those old friends in the starry sky knew that Xia Xinglie's position in his daughter's heart was actually lower than that of a little guy, he would probably die of laughter. Gradually, Xia Xinglie's figure went further and further away, and then disappeared in the vast starry sky. Wherever he passed, many old monsters were alarmed, and they watched in awe as the extreme demon Sword Emperor, who shook the starry sky, walked past the gate of their homes. 1 month later, on the star chess sea, Lin, who was meditating, seemed to sense something and opened his eyes. Almost at the same time, accompanied by a magnificent rain of light, Ahu, who was dressed in a yellow dress and looked like an immortal, floated out of the void. Brother Lin, the entrance of Kunlun ruins is about to appear. Chapter 1747. The Kunlun ruins would open in 10 days. Who came here to take Lin Sun with him? Lin Sun agreed immediately. It had been half a year since he had flattened the setting sun Tang Valley. In the past half a year, he had been in seclusion in the star chess sea, tempering his cultivation. His great sage initial stage power had long been tempered to an incomparably solid state. Moreover, by comprehending the void-shattering finger of Dian, Lin Sun also grasped a trace of the mystery of the great way of space. In the future, as long as he slowly pondered and comprehended it, he would be able to master this brand-new power that only great sages could master. However, Old Toad, Alu, Little Silver, Little Tian, and the Big Blackbird, who originally planned to break through to the peak of the eminent sage stage before the Kunlun ruins opened, failed to achieve their wishes. It wasn't that he didn't work hard, but rather that the divine path was a quest. If he wanted to break through to the next level, apart from hard work, he also needed fated chances. Right now, what Old Toad and the others lacked was an opportunity to break through. According to Ahu, once they entered the Kunlun ruins, Old Toad and the rest would have plenty of opportunities to seize the opportunity to break through. The reason for that was because the Kunlun ruins contained many unimaginable supreme fortuitous encounters. However, before they advanced to the ultimate great sage, it was extremely easy for Old Toad and the rest to encounter unexpected dangers if they wanted to enter the Kunlun ruins. After learning this, Lin Sun didn't hesitate to make the decision to place Old Toad and the others in the Great Way Tower. This way, even if he encountered danger in the Kunlun ruins, he would be able to shoulder it alone. Senior, knowing that Lin Sun was about to leave, Su Bai was very reluctant. After several months of cultivation, The youth in the straw sandals had obviously undergone many transformations. He was heroic and his eyes were bright and full of expression. I've already helped you sort out some techniques and divine medicines to restore your innate power. Whether it succeeds or not will depend on you. Lin soon handed a storage bag to Su Bai, thought for a while, and added, in the future, when you go out to gain experience, you should stick to your original heart. If you should fight, fight. If you should retreat, retreat. In the final analysis, you still have to rely on yourself to solve the problems you encounter on the road of cultivation. Su Bai nodded fiercely and kept it in mind. Lin soon patted the boy's thin shoulder and turned away without saying anything more. On this day, Lin Sun and who left the Star Chess Sea together and headed for the Kunlun ruins. As he watched them leave, the youth in straw shoes stared blankly for a long time. Feeling frustrated, he drank the first strong drink in his life. The burning sensation was like being cut by a knife, causing the youth's face to flush red, and tears almost flowed out. He quickly took a deep breath, and a hint of determination appeared on his slightly immature face. Senior, I won't disappoint you the next time we meet. For people in the ancient Desolation realm, Lin Sun's departure was silent, and no one knew about it. However, the shores of the Star Chess Sea would still attract many cultivators to observe and make a pilgrimage every once in a while. In the mortal world, Xiao Empire. With the stars in his arms and the moon in his arms, the old man Du So looked at the sky and calculated for a while. Then, he suddenly laughed. Kunlun Ruins. This miraculous place, one of the 4 great divine ruins, is finally going to appear in the world again. Beside him, the old priest of the observatory had a smile in his eyes that were as clear and pure as a baby's, and he said leisurely, since ancient times, that place has given birth to many ancestors of one Tao, and it is also regarded as the ancestral court of the Great Way. Every time the Kunlun ruins opens, it means that a supreme fortune is about to be born. However, this kind of fortune related to becoming an emperor or ancestor is not something that everyone can enjoy. After saying that, Lin Sun's figure appeared in the old priest's mind. This little guy should be on his way to the Kunlun ruins now, right? The old man Du So revealed a complicated expression and sighed. The ultimate ruins contains all the forces in the world, and it includes 3,900 realms. Each realm has its own cause and effect. This kind of place has buried countless emperor realm figures with evil intentions. It is also known as the last age of the Great Way. The Kunlun ruins, the ancestral court of the Great Way, is accompanied by calamities and fortune. Every time it opens, it will attract some outstanding figures from all the heavens in the starry sky, but only 1 in 1,000 can survive. It is truly a place of great calamity and treasure. There are too many causes and effects, and it is worthy of being the secret of the ancestral court of the Great Way. The ruins of fortune can only be entered by Emperor Realm cultivators, but it has only appeared once in the primordial times. Since then, it has never appeared again. It is said that half of that place is the netherworld and the other half is the yang world. Yin and yang coexist, and it is extremely mysterious. However, the most mysterious place is the ruins of profundity. There are only legends about the ruins of profundity in the starry sky, and it is extremely ethereal. Even the ancestor of one Tao doesn't dare to make a conclusion on whether it really exists or not. The 4 great divine ruins contain all the origin secrets of the heavens. Unfortunately, since ancient times, no one has been able to completely travel through the 4 great divine ruins. It is truly a pity. Du So smoked his pipe. His face was shrouded in smoke, and his mood was a little gloomy. The old priest of the observatory said, "Speaking of which, Lin Sun is quite interesting. When he was young, he had entered the demon saint's secret land in the ultimate. This time, he will definitely go to the Kunlun ruins. I wonder if he will have the chance to go to the ruins of fortune and the ruins of profundity in the future." Do So sneered. Don't think too highly of this kid. There is no lack of monstrous geniuses like him on the starry sky ancient path. I even wonder how he will fight against those monstrous geniuses when he goes to the Kunlun ruins this time. This is not something we can worry about, said the old priest. The old priest said, however, this child will never disappoint. Do So did not reply and silently smoked his pipe. The vast universe arc flew in the boundless void at a speed as if it was teleporting, causing the surrounding scene to distort and blur. On the ship, Ahu was talking to Lin Sun. Since ancient times, the Kunlun ruins has been opened every once in a while, but only the outer area can be explored by cultivators. But every time the Battle of the Nine Regions, the Kunlun ruins will be completely opened, and its real core area will be revealed. This time is destined to be no exception. However, there's something I have to remind Brother Lin. Both of us have the Flying Immortal token. After entering the Kunlun ruins, we can rely on the Flying Immortal token to avoid some extremely dangerous areas and obtain fortuitous encounters that others can't obtain. But because of this, when you and I appear, we will definitely be targeted by those powerful figures on the starry sky ancient path. They will try to snatch the flying token from us. Hearing this, Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, Those guys on the starry sky ancient path don't have the flying token? Ahu nodded. This is the benefit of the Battle of the Nine Regions. Even on the starry sky ancient path, there is no such blessing. After the first two battles between the Nine Regions came to an end, some of the Xenorace experts suffered greatly when they brought the Flying Immortal token to the Kunlun ruins. Some of their Flying Immortal tokens were directly seized, and it could be said to be a heavy lesson. Lin Sun nodded to show that he understood. Ahu continued to introduce. As far as I know, the descendants of many top forces on the starry sky ancient path will participate this time, and there are many peerless and ruthless people on the starry sky great sage list. Don't underestimate the starry sky great sage list. The forces on the starry sky ancient path are as vast as the sea, and there are so many cultivators that are as numerous as the starry sky. But only a small number of great sages can be ranked on this list. All of these characters are terrifying existences who have reached the peak and possess unparalleled power. Some of them are natural-born saints, goddesses, and there are also monstrous figures with extraordinary talent who were born with knowledge. Of course, Brother Lin, you don't have to belittle yourself. With your foundation and combat strength, you are already comparable to those on the starry sky great sage list. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The starry sky ancient path. Exactly how vast and divine a world is it to be able to give birth to so many extraordinary figures. Compared with it, the ancient desolation realm was indeed a little lacking. It was no wonder that Ao Zhentian and Yin Huan invited Lin Sun to the starry sky ancient path, thinking that the ancient desolation realm could no longer meet Lin Sun's needs for cultivation. Similarly, Xia Xinglia, Xia Xiaochong's father, had said similar words when he left not long ago. Brother Lin, if there are no accidents, we will arrive at the Fairy River within 3 days. It is located in a secret world, and it is also one of the entrances to the Kunlun ruins. Ahu said, all the experts from the starry sky ancient path who want to enter the Kunlun ruins have to pass through the Fairy River. In addition, in some special places where the broken worlds meet, with the help of the fairy token, we can also sense the path to the Kunlun ruins. However, although these paths lead to the Kunlun ruins, most of them can't enter the core area of the Kunlun ruins. To be safe, we will also go to the Kunlun ruins from the Fairy River like those experts from the starry sky ancient path. Lin Sun was tempted. In addition to himself, Alu, Old Toad, Little Silver, and Zhao Jingxian, Prince Xiaohao and Ruowu also had the fairy token. When the time came, would they also participate? Lin Sun couldn't help asking, Miss Ahu, do you know how big the Kunlun ruins is? Ahu pursed her lips and smiled. No one in the world can answer this question because no one has been able to measure how vast the Kunlun ruins is since ancient times. I see. Lin Sun nodded. A day later, the vast universe arc fiercely rushed out of a barrier that seemed like primal chaos. Under Ahu's control, it quickly flew into a void that seemed like nothingness. 2 days later, a series of rumbling sounds rang out in the distance. Lin Sun stood at the bow of the ark and looked into the distance. At the end of the empty and boundless void, he saw a Milky Way pouring down like the Milky Way falling from the sky. The rolling white torrent fell on the void and turned into countless thin streams that spread and flowed in the void. It gave people the feeling that there was a surging river in the void. It came from the void and returned to the boundless. It was mighty and spectacular. That's the fairy river. Rumor has it that its source comes from a divine spring in the Kunlun ruins. The clear and turbid water of the river is able to flow in the void. Chapter 1748. Brother Lin, if you want to enter the Kunlun ruins, you have to cross this fairy river. Leaping over it is like a fish leaping over the dragon gate. If you don't have the foundation of the great saint realm, you will be washed away by the river. Ahu put away the vast universe. Arkansas vigilance and seriousness appeared between her brows. The entrance to the Kunlun ruins will open in about 2 days. During this period, many powerhouses of the starry sky ancient path will come. At that time, we must keep a low profile. As she spoke, the aura around her body suddenly changed. Her originally beautiful and fairy-like appearance became delicate and pretty, and even the temperament around her became gentle and calm. It was difficult for Lin Sun to see through this disguise. This way, we won't attract attention. Ahu blinked her watery eyes. Lin Sun pointed at Ahu's eyes. The flaw is in these eyes. No matter how ordinary your temperament and appearance are, you will be very eye-catching with such a pair of eyes full of spirit. Ahu hummed. Her eyes were as calm as still water. How about this? Lin Sun still shook his head. You have to change your voice too. Not only was Ahu not angry, but she said happily, Brother Lin, do you mean that even if I become ordinary, if my voice doesn't change, I will still attract many people's attention? Lin Sun said frankly, Of course. Didn't the ancients say what a beauty is? Voice, appearance, spirit, charm, and form are all extraordinary in the world. Okay, I'll listen to you. Ahu giggled, her eyes curved into a pair of crescent moons, like a little fox in full bloom. When she spoke, her voice had already changed. It lost a sweet charm like the sound of nature, but it was still sweet and pleasant. Lin Sun did not choose to disguise himself. Ahu did this because she was a lively and natural beauty. Every frown and smile had a charm that could charm the world. Once they appeared in the crowd, they would definitely become the focus of attention. If they didn't want to attract attention, of course, they had to change slightly. After a brief discussion, the two continued to fly forward. Rumble! The fairy river fell from the sky like a waterfall falling to the 9th heaven. The sound was like thunder, and the sound of water surged, splashing thousands of snow-white waves. As they got closer, Lin Sun and Ahu realized that someone had already arrived and was waiting at the bank of the flying deity river. The area near the river was very large. There were groups of 3 to 5 people, each standing in different areas. There were hundreds of people moving about. There were men and women among these figures, and all of them exuded a shocking holy aura. Some were riding immortal birds, wearing feathered robes with large sleeve. Some sat cross-legged on the clouds and were surrounded by a host of stars, and their bearings were lazy and comfortable. Some of them stood with swords on their backs, their eyes narrowed, and their bodies were filled with killing intent. Some, no matter if it was a man or a woman, they were simply like gods in the heavens, and their auras were too extraordinary. They were like a group of dazzling stars that erupted with extraordinary splendor and vied for beauty. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling awestruck. There were several hundred people present, and half of them were great saints. A great sage was immeasurably great, even more powerful than a true sage. In the ancient Desolation territory, a great sage would be worshipped wherever he went, as if he was a god. Of course, such an existence was extraordinary. Right now, there were over 100 eminent saint stage powerhouses that were rarely seen gathered at the bank of the flying celestial river. It was a spectacular scene. Even the other half were figures who had stepped into the saint realm at a young age. The men were dignified and the women were beautiful. They were quite dazzling. Compared with the old monsters in the ancient Desolation territory who were still in the true sage realm, it was obvious who was superior. Lin Sun even noticed that there were some powerful figures among them. They were obviously powerful figures who stood at the top. The starry sky ancient path is really extraordinary. Lin Sun sighed inwardly. However, he also knew that those who could reach the bank of the flying deity river must be extremely extraordinary in the starry sky ancient path. There might be no shortage of saints in the heavens, but there were more experts below the saint realm, including those on the starry sky ancient path. It was like birds of a feather flocking together. Not everyone in this world was qualified to enter the Kunlun ruins. For example, in the vast ancient Desolation territory, only he, Ahu, and the old toad in the Tower of Endless Way were qualified to appear here. Come, let's go. Ahu's expression did not change. She brought Lin Sun closer to the flying deity river. Their appearance attracted the attention of many people, but they quickly retracted their gaze and chatted among themselves. The people present came from different areas of the starry sky ancient path and different forces. Only a few of them knew each other, so they were not surprised by the appearance of Lin Sun and Ahu. It could not be helped. The starry sky ancient path was too vast. If there was no introduction, it would be too difficult to recognize a person's background. Of course, those peerless figures whose names shook the starry sky ancient path were the exception. Lin Sun was very famous in the ancient Desolation territory, and he could be said to be the focus of the world. However, on the bank of the flying deity river, he was just a stranger. However, this made Lin Sun quite satisfied. If he did not attract attention, he would not have to worry about any accidents and mishap. It was best to make a fortune in silence. Let's do it here. The two of them found a sparsely populated corner and stood there. 3 days later, a door will appear on the flying deity river. At that time, we'll be able to arrive at the outskirts of the Kunlun ruins. Ahu pointed at the sky above the flying deity river that descended from the sky and said via voice transmission, "In the past, the layout and fortuitous encounters in the outskirts of the Kunlun ruins have long been clearly explored. For example, after entering the Kunlun ruins, you'll appear in an area called the Treasure Refinement Grounds. It's extremely vast, like a small world. Within the Treasure Refinement Grounds, there's a type of treasure refinement Dao Qi that can't be found in the outside world. As long as you seize it and fuse it into a treasure, you'll be able to repair and improve the quality of the treasure. It's extremely miraculous. In the past, the cultivators who entered the Kunlun ruins caused many intense bloody conflicts in order to fight for the treasure refinement Dao Qi. However, even though there are fortuitous encounters in the Treasure Refinement Grounds, it's also filled with many dangers. Countless strange flames will appear within it, and the most terrifying one is the Soul Annihilation Wind Flame. With a light sweep, it can destroy a peak great saint's soul. Of course, the Treasure Refinement Grounds is only the outermost area of the Kunlun ruins. Relatively speaking, it's not that dangerous. Ahu had obviously done his homework and came prepared. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. While the two of them were talking, a voice suddenly resounded in the field. "Everyone, may I ask if you've seen anyone from the 9 regions with the flying deity token?" The voice was sonorous and rumbling throughout the field. Lin Sun and Ahu's hearts trembled as they raised their heads to look. The person who spoke was a young man in black. He sat upright on the head of a crimson flame python with his arms crossed in front of his chest. His eyes were as sharp and terrifying as swords. In front of his knees was a 3-foot-long green saber. The blade flowed with strands of Tao light and emitted a ferocious and ghastly aura. Liu Beigu from the Qiyang war clan. Someone recognized the young man in black, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. There was a commotion in the field. The Qiyang war clan was one of the 10 great war clans in the starry sky. They had an extremely ancient heritage, and they were regarded as the descendants of the fire god. On the other hand, Liu Beigu was one of the best in the younger generation of the Qiyang war clan. He was a peerless genius who possessed a top-notch profound-grade talent, the flaming divine sun, and his name shook the world. He had only cultivated for 300 years, yet he was already a true peerless great saint. He possessed a formidable foundation to charge into the starry sky great saint rankings. Of course, there were many powerful figures present, and there was no lack of ruthless people who were fearless of Liu Beigu. When they heard Liu Beigu's words, they revealed expressions of interest. The flying deity token. Rumor had it that those who possessed this token could enter some forbidden places that ordinary people didn't dare to enter after entering the Kunlun ruins to search for great fortuitous encounters. Our sect is related to the Daluo ancient region. I heard that the final victor of the 9-region battlefield was someone from the ancient desolation region called Lin Sun. I wonder if he's here. Someone spoke up. It was a man with skin suffused with a faint golden luster, a smooth forehead, and an ancient sword on his back. Sword gleams interweaved in his eyes. The successor of the Daluo sword mountain, Wei Zia. Many people's expressions changed when they saw Wei Zia. The Daluo Sword Mountain was one of the 9 major sword sects on the Starry Sky ancient path. There were 3,000 true disciples in the sect, and all of them were top-notch sword cultivators. In the Starry Sky ancient path, the Daluo Sword Mountain could be called a top-notch force. It had great influence, and it was regarded as one of the holy lands for sword cultivators. On the other hand, Wei Zia was the #1 true disciple of the Daluo Sword Mountain. He was a peerless great saint sword cultivator, and he was ranked 279th on the Starry Sky Great Saint rankings. It seemed like his ranking was terrible. However, even the Starry Sky Great Saint rankings compiled by the Dark Yellow Tao Court, one of the 6 great Tao courts, only had 500 spots. The Starry Sky ancient path was vast. Peerless great saints might be rare, but their numbers were definitely huge. However, only the 500 strongest peerless great saints could be ranked on the rankings. It was not an exaggeration to say that Wei Zia was already a peerless figure who could shake the Starry Sky by being ranked 279th on the Starry Sky Great Saint rankings. Lin Sun. At this moment, because of Wei Zia's words, many people present remembered this name. Only Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly and transmitted his voice. This sword cultivator named Wei Zia seems to be hostile to me. Ahu replied, I happen to know that the founder of the Daluo Sword Mountain is Sword Emperor of Green Feather. Sword Emperor of Green Feather first proved his Tao in the great Luo ancient region. In the first battle of 9 regions, he won the title of the first person on the battlefield of 9 regions. And this time on the battlefield of 9 regions, the great Luo ancient region suffered a crushing defeat in your hands. As the successor of the Daluo Sword Mountain, it's hard for Wei Zia not to know you. Hearing this, Lin Sun thought of Jian Qingchen. Jian Qingchen was the leader of the younger generation of the great Luo ancient region, but he died in Lin Sun's hands on the battlefield of 9 regions. Chapter 1750. Daluo Sword Mountain, Sword Emperor of Green Feather, Jian Qingchen, Qi Emperor Sword, Daluo Ancient Domain. This was like a clue that connected Wei Zia to the whole story. Lin Sun vaguely understood that Wei Zia was hostile to him because he had learned about the fiasco of the Daluo Ancient Domain. Wei Zia, are you also interested in the Flying Immortal token? Liu Beigu, who was sitting cross-legged on the flaming dragon python, opened his mouth. I'm interested in Lin Sun. Wei Zia looked cold. Daluo Sword Mountain once took a fancy to a young man named Jian Qingchen, but he was killed by him. This matter even alarmed Grandmaster Greenfeather. Grandmaster Greenfeather. There was silence. Everyone realized that Wei Zia was talking about Sword Emperor of Greenfeather, who was famous in the starry sky a long time ago. The death of Jian Qingchen even alarmed Sword Emperor of Greenfeather. As the successor of Daluo's Sword Mountain, Wei Zia probably shouldered the task of killing Lin Sun in the Kunlun ruins this time. Lin Sun and who looked at each other and understood. We can cooperate. Liu Beigu invited. I want the flying immortal token. Lin Sun is yours. Humph. Suddenly, someone snorted. Ridiculous. Who do you think you are? How dare you covet the flying immortal token? Who? Liu Beigu's face darkened. He turned his head and his expression changed slightly. It's you, Koan Jilin. The crowd was restless and looked over at the same time. They saw a majestic figure standing in the void with his hands behind his back. His eyes were deep and frightening like whirlpools. Beside him, there was a group of strong people, which made him look brave and domineering. Koan Jilin, the successor of primitive Taoism court, one of the 6 major Taoist courts, ranked 244th on the Great Saint list of Starry Sky. His ranking was much higher than that of Wei Zia. The most frightening thing was that Koan Jilin was a pure-blooded descendant of the Koan family, and his sect was one of the 6 major Taoist orthodoxies. These 2 backgrounds alone were enough to deter the crowd. For a moment, all eyes were focused on Koan Jilin. Because so far Koan Jilin was the strongest great saint present in terms of identity, status, and strength. Koan Jilin's deep voice boomed like thunder. I, Koan Jilin, have made it clear that Lin Sun is my prey. Whoever dares to snatch him will be my enemy. Everyone looked at each other. Even Liu Beigu and Wei Zia were silent. They knew how powerful Koan Jilin was and did not want to make things difficult for him at this time. Looks like there are a lot of people who have designs on you. Ahu's voice carried a trace of strangeness, as if he was mocking and teasing. Lin Sun shrugged his shoulders and said, I can't help it. I'm not afraid of the clouds, because I'm at the highest level. Ahu almost burst out laughing. Even at a time like this, he was still in the mood to joke around. Did he think that Koan Jilin, Liu Beigu, Wei Zia, and the others were nothing more than floating clouds? Ding dong. Ding dong, in next to no time, an enormous flaming phoenix soared over. Its wings were gorgeous, and it flowed with a myriad of specks of light, pure and ethereal. 5 or 6 men and women were sitting on the flaming phoenix. All of them were extraordinary like immortals in the sky. Their leader was a graceful woman with black hair like a waterfall. She was dressed in white with a golden belt around her waist. Her eyebrows and eyes were picturesque, and her skin was as smooth as jade. Her lips were red and her teeth were white. Her eyes were as clear as the mouth of a pure spring. She gave people the feeling that she was like a fairy in the sky, ethereal and cold. For a moment, all the practitioners present couldn't help showing their amazement. The flaming phoenix fluttered, and the woman in white floated down. The group of men and women behind her were also outstanding. But beside the woman in white, they seemed to be dim. Only Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly. At first glance, many people would be attracted by the appearance of the woman in white, but in Lin's eyes, the aura of this woman made him instinctively feel a sense of danger. Who is this woman? Wen Qingxue. It turns out to be her. There was a commotion in the field. Many practitioners came to their senses. Wen Qingxue was the successor of Panwu Taoist court, one of the 6 Taoist courts. She was peerless and ranked 3rd on the Starry Sky Beauty list. Her combat power was superb and ranked 93rd on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. On the Starry Sky Ancient Path, countless peerless figures were fascinated by Wen Qingxue's charm and fell in love with her. There was once a romantic man who commented, Wen Qingxue is a woman with immortal skin and divine bones. She is so beautiful that she is rarely seen in thousands of years. A group of stinky men who have never seen the world. A snort sounded in Lin's ears. He looked up and saw who, with his hands behind his back, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, seemingly disdainful. Lin couldn't help but be speechless. He thought of Hu's real appearance. If he really showed it, he would definitely not be inferior to Wen Qingxue. Moreover, Hu had a kind of natural charm. His every frown, smile, and movement could simply bring disaster to a country and people. Even a lonely old monk couldn't bear it. However, if they really compared, they really couldn't be compared. The so-called beauties were just like plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum. Each had its own advantages and peerless elegance. When Qingxue seemed to have long been used to the gazes cast on her, she ignored them and went to the field by herself. Her clothes were whiter than snow, and her hair was as black as ink. Her figure was ethereal, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Some cultivators couldn't help but feel ashamed of their inferiority. Suddenly, Kuan Jilin spoke with a powerful voice. Fairy Wen Qingxue, every 100 years, the Starry Sky Great Sage list will be re-ranked. Now, there are less than 5 years left until the next ranking. I am confident that I will be in the top 100 on the list by then. What does it have to do with me? Wen Qingxue said indifferently. Her voice was clear and melodious, like the sound of a jade pendant. Kuan Jilin stared at Wen Qingxue with burning eyes. When I first met you, you said that if I was in the top 100, you would consider dating me. The crowd was in an uproar, and all of them were astounded. No one had expected that something like this had happened between Kuan Jilin and Wen Qingxue. Wen Qingxue said indifferently, I'm only considering, not agreeing. It won't be too late to say that when your ranking surpasses mine on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. Kuan Jilin was not discouraged at all. He said with great pride, I'm already confident that my cultivation base will improve by leaps and bounds during this trip to the Kunlun ruins. If I really surpass you in the next ranking, haha, you can't refuse me anymore. Oh, Wen Qingxue replied. Her beautiful face was calm, as if she didn't care at all. Dong, dong, dong. The air trembled, and a series of footsteps that sounded like muffled thunder resounded from the distance. The sound of footsteps smashed into everyone's hearts, causing many of them to almost cough blood. Their expressions could not help but change. In the distance, a slender figure in a black robe walked over. Under the brim of the hat, a pair of eyes that were bright like blades could be seen. She carried a long and narrow saber that was over 3 meters long. The blade was snow-white, and it was about the same length as her slender figure. It gave off a strong visual impact, especially when every single step she took caused the nearby space to crack open like a spiderweb, and it emanated a ferocious and piercingly cold aura. She was obviously a woman. Her fingers that held the saber were as white as jade, and her wrist was whiter than sheep fat. It was suffused with a crystal-clear luster. When they saw this woman, be it Kuan Jilin, Wei Zia, or Lu Beigu, their pupils could not help but constrict. She actually came as well? When Qingxue also glanced sideways at the figure who was coming at them with a shocking momentum, and then looked away. As for the others present, all of them revealed fearful and even horrified expressions. They recalled the most famous saber maniac on the Starry Sky ancient path, Tang Su, a peerless paragon from the Berserk Blade Battle Clan, a woman who was known as a genius in the Saber Dao. A saber saint who had been ranked 79th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list many years ago. The entrance to the Kunlun ruins hasn't opened yet. Does anyone want to fight now? As soon as Tang Su arrived, she looked around. Her voice was low and had a unique magnetism. It was piercingly cold like a knife, as if it could cut a person's throat. Everyone was silent as they secretly cursed in their hearts. Everyone on the Starry Sky ancient path knew how crazy saber maniac Tang Su was. It was not an exaggeration to call her a female Rakshasa. Over the years, countless opponents had been killed by Tang Su with the heaven-slashing saber. This woman was so fierce that no one dared to treat her as a woman. Kuan Jilin, do you want to play? Tang Su looked at Kuan Jilin, who snorted, when the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. If you really want to play, it's not too late to enter the Kunlun ruins. Coward, Tang Su said bluntly. You, Kuan Jilin's face darkened. However, Tang Su could not be bothered with him. She looked at Wen Qingxue and said, Wen Qingxue, do you want to spar? Wen Qingxue said indifferently, You're about to break the realm. I won't be your whetstone. Tang Su seemed to be a little dispirited. With a clang, she put away the long and shiny heaven-slashing saber in her hand, took out a flagon and drank alone. That heroic, carefree, and unruly attitude made many men blush with shame. Some women's eyes lit up, and they could not help but feel a sense of admiration for Tang Su's arrogant demeanor. Interesting. Lin Sun also praised in his heart. Tang Su's breath was sharp and piercingly cold, like a free and unruly gale in the sky. It was really rare for a woman to have such momentum. Ahu transmitted his voice, This woman is not simple. I have heard that when she proved her Tao and became a great saint, she once said, My saber is the Tao, and the Tao is my saber. Even an Emperor realm expert of the Frenzy Saber fighting clan was shocked, thinking that Tang Su may become a female saber emperor in the future. Lin Sun was moved. The way he looked at Tang Su also carried a hint of peculiarity. It seemed that such a peerless woman was only ranked 79th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. In that case, what kind of peerless talents did the characters ranked above her have? There were also Wen Qingxue, Kuan Jilin, Wei Zia. All of them were extraordinary, but their rankings on the Starry Sky Great Sage list were not high. Chapter 1752. Lu Beigu, Wei Zia, Kuan Jilin, Wen Qingxue, Tang Su. Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion at the sight of these famous or brilliant peerless sages. Suddenly, Lin Sun caught a glimpse of a familiar figure rushing over from afar with a group of cultivators. It was a woman with a jade-like face and clear eyes. She was dressed in a water-green dress. She was simple, beautiful, and had an outstanding appearance. Jiang Heng, the successor of Xuanji Taoism sect, the Starry Sky Ancient Path. Back in the flying immortal battlefield of the Nine-Region battlefield, Lin Sun had attracted Jiang Heng's hostility and killing intent because he had picked the Night Jade Vine. However, even Lin Sun didn't expect to meet her again on the bank of the flying immortal river. Almost at the same time, Jiang Heng also saw Lin Sun at a glance. Her beautiful eyes widened, and she seemed to be quite surprised. Then an unspeakable anger surged in her heart. How dare this thief who stole the divine medicine of the sect appear in such a swagger? He really didn't know what was good for him. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he quickly sent a message to Ahu, Be prepared. My identity may be exposed. Ahu narrowed her eyes and nodded without a trace. But to Lin Sun's surprise, Jiang Heng quickly withdrew her gaze and ignored Lin Sun, as if she had ignored him. But a cold and clear voice sounded in Lin Sun's ears. Thief, are you very nervous? Very nervous? If I reveal your identity, do you believe that those strong people present will not hesitate to eat you alive? There was hatred and a touch of complacency in the voice, thinking that he had caught Lin Sun's weakness. The voice was, of course, from Jiang Heng. Lin Sun said with a calm expression, I think you can't wait to eat me alive, but it doesn't matter. You can shout all you want. You won't scare me even if you shout yourself hoarse. Jiang Heng raised her eyebrows and gritted her teeth in anger. Her beautiful eyes were about to spit fire. Thief, do you really think I don't dare? Go ahead. Lin Sun looked indifferent. Don't be so arrogant. Jiang Heng was so angry that she wanted to strangle Lin Sun. Junior sister, don't bother with such despicable people. When we enter the Kunlun ruins, I'll personally capture and kill him. Ji Qian's voice rang in Jiang Heng's ears. Senior brother, this kid is too arrogant. Jiang Heng said angrily. Junior sister, don't forget what I told you before. Not only did he steal the night sky jade vine and the 9-leaf gold spirit grass, he also has a mysterious pagoda that can block the great sun thunder wheel. Ji Qian was dressed in a white robe. His long hair was gray and he was handsome. His eyes were sharp like divine light, and his whole body emitted a vast and boundless aura. He glanced at Lin Sun and didn't look at him anymore. Back then, he had used the power of a treasure to spy on the battle in the Battle of Flying Fairies. In the end, he did not hesitate to snatch the Great Way without End Tower from Lin Sun. But in the end it was all for naught. Jiang Heng immediately calmed down. She had heard from her eldest senior brother that the mysterious pagoda had appeared in the Dao Battle of the Emperors a long time ago. Its might was unfathomable, and it shook the heavens. Apart from that, this kid also carries the flying fairy token that everyone covet. If we expose his identity now, we won't have the chance to kill him and seize the treasures in his possession. Ji Qian said via voice transmission. Jiang Heng grunted and took a deep breath to forcefully suppress the anger in her heart. The appearance of Ji Qian, Jiang Heng, and the others caused a commotion in the surroundings. Perhaps the Xuanji Dao sect wasn't as monstrous as the 6 great orthodoxies, but it was still a top ancient orthodoxy. Ji Qian was the #1 true disciple of the Xuanji Dao sect, and he himself was a direct descendant of the Emperor clan, Ji clan. He was extremely respected. His combat strength couldn't be underestimated either, and he was ranked 248th on the Starry Sky Great Saint ranking. They actually endured it. Ahu was alarmed for a moment. But she understood after a moment's thought. It seems that they are worried that your prey will be snatched away by others, so they choose to endure and don't intend to expose your identity. Lin Sun nodded and suddenly said, "Actually, I'm also very interested in Jiang Heng." "Oh," Ahu said with a strange look in her eyes. Obviously, she had misunderstood. Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised and said, "This woman's surname is Jiang. I'm just curious if she has anything to do with the Emperor clan, Jiang clan." In the city of the tragic death, a wisp of Xiankong ghost kings had once given Lin Sun a light cyan hairpin shaped like a bamboo leaf before it disappeared. He asked Lin Sun to return this thing to a person named Jiang Xingchua when he had the chance to meet the descendants of the Emperor clan, Jiang clan. Xiankong Ghost King was one of the successors of Mount Mind and had once taught Lin Sun the art of everlasting leakless. It could be said that he was Lin Sun's senior brother. Being entrusted with this task, Lin Sun was naturally duty-bound. Ahu seemed to be lost in thought as he said, "According to my knowledge, the Emperor clan, the Jiang clan, resides at the banks of the ancient path in the starry sky, the river of Jiang. 5 great figures at the Emperor realm emerged from their ancestors, and they were conferred the title of the 5 Emperor clans. Jiang River. 1 clan with 5 emperors." Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. How could the Emperor clan, Jiang clan, have such a terrifying foundation? What kind of person was Jiang Xingchua? In the following time, many strong practitioners on the ancient starry sky road came one after another. They were either the successors of famous sects or the descendants of ancient clans. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5, making the atmosphere on the bank of the Fairy River more and more tense. During this period, Lin Sun noticed several shocking peerless great sages one after another. For example, Tao Jianxing, a pure-blooded descendant of the Taowu battle clan, one of the top 10 battle clans, was a peerless great sage with a flamboyant bearing and monstrous vigor. Similarly, Tao Jianxing was also a ruthless figure ranked on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. There was also Yan Chunjun, the successor of the Universe Dao Court, one of the 6 great Dao courts, Ling Kezi, the successor of the ancient Nanhua Temple, and so on. Every single one of them possessed a great foundation and extraordinary aura. Even among the peerless great sages, they could be considered top-notch existences. At this moment, many cultivators felt their hearts sink. After the Kunlun ruins opened, with so many peerless figures participating, One could imagine how cruel the competition would be. At this moment, even someone like Kuan Jilin became silent and did not dare to be as flamboyant as before. There was no helping it. There were too many peerless great sages present, and there was no lack of ferocious figures that could make even him feel fearful. However, even though he was fearful, he was not afraid. No matter who it was, they had come prepared for this trip to the Kunlun ruins. Very soon, the time for the entrance to the Kunlun ruins to open was approaching. In the sky above the fairy river that descended from the sky, an obscure and mysterious aura faintly seeped out, revealing an extremely blurry passageway of nothingness. At this moment, there were thousands of powerhouses gathered in the arena. They were densely packed, and the scene was enough to make anyone's scalp go numb. The atmosphere was very oppressive and tense as everyone waited quietly. Even Lin Sun and Hu stopped talking. During this period of time, the two of them had kept a low profile and did not do anything conspicuous. They did not attract much attention, causing them to heave a sigh of relief. Of course, the successor of Xuanji Dao sect, Jiang Heng, would occasionally glance at Lin Sun, as if he was afraid that Lin Sun would escape. Unfortunately, Jiang Heng did not know that Lin Sun had already made up his mind. After entering the Kunlun ruins, he would find an opportunity to capture her alive. Suddenly, a surprised voice sounded. The successors of the Devil Court are here as well. As soon as these words were spoken, the silence in the arena was broken, and it caused a commotion. In the distance, a group of figures appeared. The leader was a green-robed man with a slightly sickly expression and abnormally fair skin. His hair was as white as snow, and it hung down to his waist. His face was handsome and devilishly beautiful. Other than that, there was nothing eye-catching about him. However, when they saw the green-robed man appear, many people trembled, and their expressions changed abruptly. Hua Xingli, the successor of the Devil Court, one of the 6 great Tao courts, an extremely legendary peerless great saint, and a ruthless devil who killed without batting an eyelid. Rumor had it that there were at least 8,000 opponents who had died in his hands, if not 10,000. One must know that all of these opponents were famous saint stage figures. Not long ago, a sensational event happened. Hua Xingli made a move and killed a peerless figure ranked 237th on the Starry Sky Great Saint list, causing a huge uproar on the Starry Sky Ancient Path. At this moment, who could not be shocked when they saw such a great devil whose hands were stained with blood? Hua Xingli seemed very calm in the face of this attention. He smiled slightly and did not say anything else. He brought the group of successors of the Devil Court behind him and stopped by the flying fairy river. Lin Sun. However, before the crowd could calm down, a cold voice suddenly rang out beside Hua Xingli. "How dare you appear here? Do you think that no one at the banks of the flying immortal river will recognize you?" The person who spoke was a man in a blood-red robe with long and narrow scarlet eyes. His expression was filled with undisguised hatred. Xuechingi. Lin Sun's heart sank. He never thought that he would run into Zhang Xian here. Furthermore, Zhang Xian was with the successors of the Demon Court. Lin Sun. Upon hearing this name, there was an uproar. The same thought came to the minds of many experts. The guy with the flying fairy token had long been hiding in the crowd? Following Xuechingi's gaze, many people fixed their eyes on Lin Sun. Ji Qian and Jiang Heng looked at each other with hatred in their hearts. They did not expect that there would be an idiot who exposed Lin Sun's identity at this time. This was equivalent to directly destroying their plan. For a moment, they all wanted to kill Xuechingi. Lin Sun also sighed in his heart. The world was unpredictable. Jiang Heng did not expose his identity, but Xuechingi, the guy who had luckily escaped from Lin Sun's hands, exposed everything. However, Lin Sun was not afraid. He looked at Xuechingi coldly and said, "Loser. If you hadn't hidden yourself, you would have died in the 9-region battlefield. How could you still stand in front of me and bark like crazy?" His words were blunt, but it also confirmed Lin Sun's identity to everyone present. For a moment, many people's eyes revealed killing intent and were ready to make a move. Chapter 1754. Lin Sun. It was a name that was unfamiliar to most of the people present. But it didn't prevent them from seeing Lin Sun as prey. The reason was that Lin Sun had the flying fairy token. This information was confirmed by Wei Zia, so there was no way it could be false. On the other hand, the flying immortal token meant to seek fortune and avoid calamity. It meant that one could surmount some places of danger that were impossible to surmount and seize the fortune within them. For a moment, Lin Sun became the focus of the whole audience from an insignificant role. Even Kuan Jilin, Wen Qingxue, Tang Su, Wei Zia, Hua Xingli, and the other geniuses looked over. There was curiosity, murderous intent, and also a hint of interest. Leave it to me. Just pretend you don't know me and watch the show in peace. Lin Sun remained calm and transmitted his voice to Ahu. Ahu readily agreed. Among those present, she should be the one who knew the details of Lin Sun the best. If anyone thought that Lin Sun was a vulnerable prey, it would be a big mistake. Everyone, let me introduce him to you. He is the winner of the Battle of the Nine Regions, an influential figure from the ancient Desolation realm. Xueqingyi's expression was cold as he spoke. This was not the Nine Regions battlefield, but the flying immortal river. The people gathered here were all peerless geniuses of the starry ancient path. And Lin Sun had the flying immortal token, which was enough to attract everyone present. This was undoubtedly a perfect opportunity to kill with a borrowed knife. Naturally, Xueqingyi would not miss this opportunity. Everyone had disapproving looks on their faces. Number 1 in the Nine Regions? Influential person? Compared to the starry sky ancient road, it was nothing. Oh, right. According to my knowledge, this kid has more than one flying immortal token in his possession. If I'm lying, then all of you can feel free to look for trouble with me. Xueqingyi's words stirred the crowd. They didn't care who Lin Sun was, they only cared about how many tokens of flying immortals Lin Sun had, and the answer Xueqingyi gave them made them even more tempted. Do you remember what I said? Lin Sun is my prey. Kuan Jilin was the first to speak. His voice was sonorous and his killing intent was shocking. He stared at Lin Sun as if he was staring at a dead man. Your prey? Hee, Kuan Jilin, how arrogant of you! An arrogant golden-robed man with a flamboyant bearing sneered. A pure-blooded descendant of the Bayan battle race, Tao Jianxing. Kuan Jilin's face darkened. I can't be bothered to fight with you. I only want a flying immortal badge. If anyone has any objections, feel free to ask the sword in my hand. He was very conceited. There was a sword-shaped mark between his brows, and his eyes flowed with sword radiance. The successor of Qiankuan Dao Court, Yan Chunjun. Many people didn't speak, but they looked at Lin Sun with determination in their eyes. When Qingxue watched quietly, her expression calm and indifferent. Hua Xingli frowned and glanced at Xueqingyi. He seemed to be displeased that Xueqingyi had made the decision on his own and caused such a tense situation. Ling Kezi from the ancient Nanhua Temple was a charmingly naive monk. When he saw this scene, he quickly took out a string of beads and silently chanted scriptures. However, his eyes would occasionally glance at the battlefield, revealing a trace of quick-wittedness and craftiness. Only Tang Su's eyes lit up, as if she wished for the world to be in chaos. Her voice was hoarse and magnetic as she said, "Buddy, those guys all regard you as prey. How can you bear such a great shame? If I were you, I would kill some of the most noisy ones to warn the others, or to show that you're not easy to bully." Dressed in a black robe, her eyes were as bright as stars under the brim of her hat. She was unruly and fearless of anyone present to fan the flames. Everyone frowned and was very unhappy, but no one dared to reprimand or blame Tang Su. This was the benefit of fame. Tang Su, the knife addict, ran amok in the starry sky with her sky-cutting saber. among her peers, who had the courage to compete with such a woman who was even fiercer than a man. As for Lin Sun, he might be famous in the ancient wasteland, but in this place, he was just an unknown person. Originally, Lin Sun was also angry at being treated as prey by everyone, but after hearing Tang Su's words, he couldn't help but feel happy. This woman was really interesting. Fanning the flames and sowing discord was also a kind of ability. Lin Sun had no choice but to be convinced. Lin Sun turned over his palm, and a flying fairy token appeared. Without any nonsense, he said directly, "Whoever wants it can come and get it." His voice was indifferent, but it had its own disdainful demeanor. Tang Su's eyes became brighter and she raised her thumb. A real man. Many practitioners were also secretly awed by Lin Sun's momentum. Under the watchful eyes of the public, Lin Sun dared to take out the flying immortal token so directly with a fearless attitude. This was not what an ordinary person could do. "Tell me about this man," said Hua Xingli. As Hua Xingli spoke, a look of interest appeared on his sickly pale and demonic face. Xue Qingyi didn't dare to refuse. He immediately began to talk about Lin Sun's deeds in the Nine Regions battlefield. At the same time, someone couldn't help but stand out. It was Liu Beigu of the Qiyang battle clan. He jumped down from the head of the flaming dragon python and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, let me test this man's strength, okay? If I win, the flying fairy token will belong to me. If I lose, I can only blame myself for not being skilled enough." Everyone's eyes flickered and they hesitated. The entrance of Kunlun ruins was about to open. At this time, no one was willing to fight to the death for a prey. But at the same time, no one was willing to give up such a chance to snatch the flying fairy token. "You can't." Before anyone could respond, Lin Sun had already spoken first. His voice was indifferent, and he didn't even look at Liu Beigu. Everyone was stunned. This guy from the ancient Desolation realm was very arrogant. Liu Beigu was a descendant of the Qiyang battle clan, one of the top 10 battle clans. He was a natural genius in cultivation. He had only cultivated for less than 300 years, and now he was a real peerless great sage. This kind of cultivation speed was enough to make some old monsters feel so ashamed that they couldn't even lift their heads. But Lin Sun actually said he couldn't. All of a sudden, Liu Beigu's face darkened. He didn't expect that a prey would dare to boast so shamelessly. "Let's change one." Lin Sun still didn't look at Liu Beigu. He just glanced at Tao Jianxing, Kuan Jilin, and the others. Just now, they were the ones who clamored the most. "Let's change one." Many people were a little stunned. Lin Sun's light words were equivalent to the extreme contempt for Liu Beigu, which was simply too insulting. Liu Beigu's face darkened. Originally, he just wanted to seize the initiative and snatch food from the tiger's mouth, but he never thought that he would be looked down upon. "Ha ha!" Tang Su laughed gloatingly. She felt that it was so interesting. Lin Sun's performance also made her look at him with new eyes. Regardless of his strength, his boldness was worthy of her appreciation. Tang Su's laughter was unbridled, and Liu Beigu couldn't hold back at all. "I'll kill you, bastard!" Boom! His figure broke through the air, and he pressed out his palm. Like the sky falling, it enveloped Lin Sun in all directions. The terrible profound way spread, and the void collapsed under the pressure. The angry blow of a peerless great sage was naturally extraordinary. Lin Sun didn't even look at it. He also pressed out his palm. Boom! Liu Beigu's palm suddenly collapsed, as if it was swallowed up by a great abyss, leaving nothing behind. Lin Sun's palm, like a mountain lifted by an ancient god, smashed hard on Liu Beigu. Bang! Liu Beigu flew backward and smashed through the void. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose, and he fell down like a kite with a broken string, almost falling into the fairy river. "An ant trying to shake a tree," Lin Sun said indifferently. The whole audience was silent. Many people's eyelids twitched and they gasped. They were shocked by Lin Sun's overbearing palm. No one could have imagined that a ruthless man like Liu Beigu would be swatted away like a fly. The scene was simply too shocking. Tang Su exclaimed and praised, "It's interesting to be unexpected. Dude, you're not simple." Kuan Jilin, Wei Zia, Tao Jianxing, Yan Chunjun and others couldn't help but frown. Even they were surprised that Liu Beigu was defeated in the first confrontation. You don't have the strength to match, but you still want to fight against Lin Sun. It's really, the ignorant are fearless. Ahu muttered to herself. In her opinion, Liu Beigu didn't even enter the Starry Sky Great Sage list, and he dared to jump like this. He was simply looking for trouble. Again, Liu Beigu roared and rushed up violently. His figure was immeasurable, emitting blazing light. He was completely enraged. He rushed across the void like a god of fire, and his power was so great that it made the universe tremble. Boom! He punched out, and it was faintly visible that an endless sea of molten lava and fire swept across the sky, mighty and terrifying. This was undoubtedly Liu Beigu's real ability. He vividly displayed the power of a peerless great sage, which made many people in the field nod secretly. But the next moment, Liu Beigu's body was swatted away again. He came fast and left even faster. This time, he was slapped by Lin Sun across the air, which cracked his skin and broke his bones. He couldn't help but scream in pain. Plop! He was directly smashed into the Fairy River, looking extremely miserable. If he hadn't rushed out in time, the river water gathered by the clear and turbid air could have directly swept him away and made him disappear in this void. There was dead silence in the field. If the first time was an accident, then the second time was a real battle. Unfortunately, Liu Beigu was still crushed. Even Wen Qingxue, Hua Xingli and others couldn't help but take another look at Lin Sun. Only now did they realize that this young man in the ancient Desolation realm, whom they regarded as unknown, was far from ordinary people. It was impossible for ordinary peerless great sages to defeat Liu Beigu so easily. Was it because Liu Beigu wasn't strong enough? No. It was because this guy named Lin Sun was far more powerful than Liu Beigu. For a moment, many people looked at Lin Sun with a subtle expression. You can't do it more than 3 times. If you don't know what's good for you, I'll send you to hell. Seeing that Liu Beigu, who was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to die, was about to rush over again, Lin Sun couldn't help frowning, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his cold black eyes. Chapter 1756. Jiang Heng was stunned. It had only been less than 2 years since the Battle of the 9 Realms ended, but the thief who stole the night sky jade vine from the flying immortal battlefield had already stepped into the peerless great saint stage. Moreover, even Liu Beigu was no match for him. This new change made Jiang Heng completely dazed. How was this possible? Ji Qian frowned. Originally, he had absolute confidence that he could capture and kill Lin Sun, but after witnessing Liu Beigu being completely crushed, he also realized that it was a little tricky. Xue Qingyi's mouth was filled with bitterness. He originally thought that the presence of these peerless geniuses on the starry ancient path would be enough to give Lin Sun a fatal blow. Who would have thought that Lin Sun, who was still in the same realm as him back then, had already stepped into the peerless great saint stage. The ancient Desolation realm has produced an extraordinary figure. Hua Xingli commented with a hint of emotion. This made Xue Qingyi feel even more upset. Previously, he had endlessly told Hua Xingli about all of Lin Sun's evil deeds and exaggerated them. However, who would have thought that what awaited him was not Hua Xingli's solidarity against a common enemy, but a slightly surprised praise. This benefactor's killing intent is very strong. He must have killed many people in the past. It's better for me to not provoke him. Ling Kezi of the ancient Nan Hua Temple muttered to himself. Ling Kezi of the ancient Southern Flower Temple thought to himself. Although he looked innocent and harmless, he actually had a rare talent that allowed him to see things that others couldn't with just a glance. For example, when Lin Sun fought Liu Beigu, He saw the terrifying scene of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, and the sky collapsing and the earth collapsing. He could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The atmosphere was deathly silent, and everyone's mood was undergoing a subtle change. After witnessing Lin Sun's methods, many people had already given up on the idea of snatching the flying immortal token. However, there were still many people who were determined and eager to make a move. There's not much time left. The entrance of the Kunlun ruins is about to open. If any of you are unconvinced, hurry up and make a move. I haven't had enough of the battle just now. Tang Su's unique magnetic voice resounded through the area. He was fanning the flames again, and he was doing it openly. Clang! With a clear and melodious sword cry, Wei Zia stepped forward. An iron sword floated above his head, and layers upon layers of sword shadows appeared, displaying a myriad of phenomena. Almost at the same time, the void shook as Kuan Jilin stepped out. His aura was like an erupting volcano, intimidating and intimidating. Obviously, both of them wanted to attack at this moment. Let me. Wei Zia's expression was cold, and his killing intent surged into the heavens. You can leave. Kuan Jilin frowned. He did not expect Wei Zia to fight with him. Why go through so much trouble? Why don't all of you come at me together? To tell you the truth, none of you can do it if we fight one by one. But at this moment, Lin Sun stepped forward and said calmly. His words made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. Liu Beigu's defeat had proved Lin's strength, but it didn't mean that he could look down upon others so unscrupulously. Especially since his targets were Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin. The former was the #1 true disciple of the Daluo Sword Mountain, a powerful sword cultivator who killed without fear. His battle prowess was ranked 279th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. The latter was the successor of the primitive Taoism court and a pure-blooded descendant of the Kuan family. He was famous and ranked 244th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. Even in the whole Starry Sky ancient way, who dared to look down upon him? This guy is too arrogant. After all, he is from the ancient Desolation realm. It's ridiculous that he doesn't know his place. Haha, interesting. I haven't seen such an arrogant person for a long time. I hope his battle prowess can be as strong as his tone. Otherwise, he will lose his life. There was a burst of sneer in the field. Lin Sun's attitude at the moment showed that he looked down on everything and no one, which made them a little uncomfortable. But only who felt wronged for Lin Sun. Because she thought that what Lin Sun said was a very normal thing. Why was it regarded as arrogant? In the final analysis, it was because these guys didn't know how powerful Lin Sun was. That was why the prejudice was born. Whoosh! In response to all this, Lin Sun threw his hand, and the flying fairy token floated in the void. At the same time, his clothes fluttered, and his black eyes glanced at the audience. This token is here. If you think I'm arrogant, come at me. He said word by word, and the momentum around him suddenly changed, as if he had turned into a boundless abyss that could swallow the sky and the earth. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to have changed into a different person. His black hair fluttered, and he stood on the bank of the fairy river, looking around like a god. Many people held their breath, and their faces changed dramatically. What a terrible momentum! Some strong people who were sneering and clamoring also shut their mouths, feeling creeped out. In their eyes, Lin Sun seemed to have turned into a boundless towering figure, giving them a kind of absolute oppression. He made me feel like fighting. Doesn't it mean that this guy has enough strength to compete with me? Interesting. At this moment, when Qingxue, Hua Xingli, Tao Jianxing, Ling Kezi, Yan Chunjun, and other people also felt a wave of power coming towards them, which made them run their qi. For a moment, the way they looked at Lin Sun changed again. It was as if they had seen their own kind, which made them feel extremely surprised and even unbelievable. When did such a person appear in a place like the ancient Desolation realm? Clang! Tang Su was the most straightforward. He turned his hand and took out the long and shiny sky-cutting saber. His eyes were bright under the brim of his hat, and he was eager to have a try. He said, "Buddy, you've successfully aroused my interest. Want to fight?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking calm, as if the people present were nothing. He was not arrogant, nor did he not know how to endure. He had already realized that if he didn't establish his power, there would be countless flies staring at him when he entered the Kunlun ruins. He had to take this opportunity to hurt them first. Only when they were afraid of him would they become honest and obedient. Yes. Tang Su nodded and answered naturally. Line up first. Lin Sun pointed to Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin in the distance. Just line up behind them. Of course, it's okay if you want to fight with them. Tang Su rolled his eyes. Who wants to fight with them? Until now, when he saw Lin Sun's real power, Liu Beigu, who was in the distance, woke up from his shame and anger. He deeply realized that he had not lost unjustly. This guy might not be famous, but he was actually a tough nut to crack. Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin's faces were already gloomy. The change of Lin Sun's aura also made them feel a kind of pressure. But it didn't mean that they could let Lin Sun trample on their dignity at will. Line up again. Lin Sun clearly thought that they would lose. He was going too far. A battle was about to break out. At this moment, buzz! A strange roar suddenly came from the sky above the Fairy River, and a mysterious gate emerged like a void. The entrance to the Kunlun ruins was opened at this moment. Suddenly, all the people present were shocked. They didn't care about anything else and started to act without hesitation. Let's go. There's no time to lose. The treasure refining place is limited. First come, first serve. Hurry up. Accompanied by all kinds of shouts, the powerhouses scattered in different areas of the Fairy River moved away one by one. It just happened to be like a dense divine rainbow that shot into the sky. It was dazzling and spectacular. Humph! Don't let me see you in the Kunlun ruins. Wei Zia snorted angrily. He stomped his feet and soared into the sky. In the current situation, if they continued to fight, the disadvantages would outweigh the advantages. I heard that you killed my useless brother, Kuan Xiaoyu. You can't escape. Kuan Jilin's voice was cold. After saying that, he soared into the sky. In the end, Lin Sun held back and did not stop him. He was just establishing his might. He did not want to miss the opportunity to enter the Kunlun ruins because of this. However, it's enough. Ordinary people probably won't dare to bother me anymore. Lin Sun's black eyes surged. If he could see Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin in the Kunlun ruins, he wouldn't mind killing them. Let's go. Ahu walked over. The two of them immediately took action. Bro, you have to be careful. Those guys you've seen might not be enough to make you afraid, but there are many real ruthless people in the dark who have already seen your performance. Suddenly, Tang Su's voice sounded in Lin Sun's ears. With the Flying Immortal token, you can resolve many great dangers. You've already been targeted by many people. Well, good luck. Lin Sun looked up and saw Tang Su's figure rushing into the entrance of the Kunlun ruins like lightning. Does she mean that there are people more powerful than Wen Qingxue and Hua Xingli in the dark? Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. If that's the case, will those people be on the top of the Starry Sky Saint list? While he was thinking, Lin Sun and who had already entered the entrance of the Kunlun ruins together. Whooshed, accompanied by a strange fluctuation, the two figures also disappeared. Not long after, a figure bathed in gray mist floated over from afar. It was a skinny young man with sunken eye sockets and a pair of strange brown eyes. When he walked, the fog filled the air, like a ghost walking out of hell. He looked up at the place where Lin Sun disappeared and murmured in his heart, "The plan of Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi was destroyed by this guy. Let me solve this karma." Whoosh! The next moment, he turned into a wisp of gray mist and rushed into the entrance of the Kunlun ruins. Sha Luqing of the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. He's here too. Suddenly, the void wriggled, and a monk in black appeared. On his smooth forehead, there was a black lotus mark. He watched the gray figure disappear. After thinking for a while, he also stepped into the air. Every time he took a step, a black lotus appeared under his feet. It was just like a lotus peanut. Not long after, more and more figures appeared one after another. Kunlun Ruins was one of the 4 ancient divine ruins. It was regarded as the ancestral court of the Great Way, which involved all kinds of supreme creation and attracted the attention of the entire starry sky ancient path. Chapter 1757. Kunlun Ruins. The world was vast, and the void was filled with thick chaotic qi. Between the mountains, rivers, grass, and trees, there was abundant and powerful vitality. This place seemed to have been silent for thousands of years. It was uninhabited, and it exuded a primitive and desolate aura. Standing there was as if he had returned to the beginning of chaos. The sky here was ethereal and high, suffused with a dark green color. There were stars moving in it, and streams of chaotic qi fell. On the ground, the mountains rose and fell. It was vast and boundless. Standing there, one felt especially small. Whoosh! The vast wind surged between heaven and earth like a horn from ancient times. With a wave of void fluctuations, Lin Sun and who appeared out of thin air. In an instant, Lin Sun's body suddenly sank, and he almost fell from the void. He circulated the power in his body to stabilize his figure. What an astonishing power of the law of order! It was also at this moment that he noticed the difference in this world. This place was like the residence of ancient gods. The power of the law of heaven and earth was exceptionally strong and firm, and there was a kind of oppressive force of the great Tao. According to Lin Sun's estimation, if an expert below the saint realm was here, his Tao heart would instantly collapse, and his body and soul would explode. No wonder most of the people who came to the Kunlun ruins are at the great saint stage. Ordinary saints will inevitably feel like they're carrying a heavy burden and their hands and feet are bound. Their combat strength will be greatly restricted. As Lin Sun pondered, he looked around and saw that the place where he stood was a vast wasteland filled with sand and gravel. Whoosh! Suddenly, a wisp of blue flame shot out from the ground like lightning. Wherever it passed, the void would be incinerated and torn apart. The terrifying aura made Lin Sun's eyes narrow. He suddenly ran the endless devouring scripture, and a big abyss floated around him, swallowing the wisp of blue flame. However, in just an instant Lin Sun gasped. The blue flame was extremely domineering, and it contained an obscure power of law. It was like a fierce blade that rampaged around, emitting a destructive and incinerating aura, causing Lin Sun's body to feel a burning pain. But soon, under his suppression, the wisp of blue flame was crushed into powder and obliterated. Lin Sun's expression was much more solemn. It was just a wisp of flame, but its dangerous power was enough to easily kill a true saint. How could Lin Sun not be vigilant? This is the treasure refining place. It's like a small world. The most dangerous thing is the various strange flames distributed in it. They're called Kunlun divine flames, and they can only be seen in Kunlun ruins. Beside him, Hu explained, the Kunlun divine flame you dissolved just now is just the most ordinary one. It's not that dangerous. The truly powerful Kunlun divine flame will show 2 colors, gold and purple. The divine flames will evolve into various treasures, such as swords, spears, swords, and halberds. The purple divine flame can transform into plants, rivers, clouds, birds, ferocious beasts, and even all kinds of rare spiritual bodies. This kind of divine flame is undoubtedly the most terrifying. If you encounter it, it's best to escape immediately. These 2 divine flames, one gold and one purple, are known as the soul-extinguishing wind flames by the world. When they appear, it is like a hurricane passing through, and their destructive auras are astonishing. In addition, it's said that this treasure-refining place also has a mysterious flame of pure and turbid, yin and yang and black and white. Anyone in the saint realm will die if he touches it. After a pause, Ahu reminded, it's not the origin of Tao. It can't be subdued, absorbed, or imprisoned. Lin Sun nodded and said, is there anything special about the treasure-refining qi? Ahu said, of course, the higher the quality of the treasure-refining qi, the more useful it is in repairing and upgrading treasures. She flew forward and said, let's go, let's start moving as well. Once we find the treasure refinement Dao Qi, you'll understand. Lin Sun's figure flickered and followed her. Along the way, there were vast mountains and rivers, ancient and primitive. Strong vitality flowed in the chaotic air and filled the void, making Lin Sun's qi become lively. This was undoubtedly an extremely suitable place for peerless saint to cultivate. In the ancient desolation realm, Lin Sun couldn't cultivate at all with his current realm without the support of the best blessed land and divine medicine. The reason was very simple. The aura of heaven and earth in the ancient desolation realm was far from enough to satisfy Lin Sun's cultivation. Moreover, the aura of Tao in the treasure refining place was so vigorous that ordinary sages might be suppressed. But for Lin Sun, it was a blessed land to comprehend the mysteries of Tao. He'd gathered some plants, and all of them were very ordinary. However, they contained surging vitality that was dense to the point it seemed material. If he brought them to the outside world, then they could be called rare spirit materials. But in the treasure refining place, they spread like weeds and could be seen everywhere. Why don't I see any living things? Lin Sun suddenly asked. Along the way, there were vast mountains and rivers, lush and full of vitality, but there was no sign of birds or animals at all. Not even a single living ant could be seen. Ahu said quickly, this is the treasure refining place. It has been like this since ancient times. In the past, there were cultivators who intended to stay here and cultivate, and they didn't intend to leave. But in the end, what happened later? Without exception, they all died. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly. After 10 minutes, Ahu suddenly stopped moving, and a wisp of a smile arose on the corners of his mouth as he said, look. This was a rugged and steep mountain without any grass. But on the cliff on one side of the mountainside, there was a rainbow-like airflow fluttering and a rain of light. It was like a fountain, but what emerged was a colorful and magnificent airflow of Tao. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. Treasure refining qi? Yes, it's not bad. As Ahu said, she floated to the void near the cliff of the mountain, but she didn't get close. She pointed out, Brother Lin, as long as you integrate the treasure refining qi into the treasure, it will repair and improve the treasure. It's extremely magical. Lin Sun also approached and saw that on the cliff, the treasure refining qi was like a rainbow-like airflow, exuding a holy and mysterious aura. But before you collect it, be careful. As she said, Ahu stretched out her hand and an invisible force spread. But before she could get close to the treasure refining qi, a group of dazzling flames suddenly swept out of the cliff. There were more than 10 flames, each of which was light green. Like a group of sharks smelling blood, they smashed Ahu's attack with a bang. Ahu was not in a hurry. A verdant palm leaf fan appeared in her palm, and she waved it casually. Whoosh, violent gales whistled and swept space to the point of collapsing, and the group of flames was instantly destroyed and transformed into strands of a rain of flames that vanished into nothingness. Ahu put away the palm leaf fan and said, if you encounter the treasure refining qi in the future, you must be vigilant first. Every place where the treasure refining qi is born must be accompanied by Kunlun divine flame. She stretched out her hand and grabbed the rainbow-like treasure refining qi, and then threw it to Lin Sun. Have a try. Lin Sun didn't refuse and took out the broken blade. Buzz, as the treasure refining qi surged into it, the broken blade suddenly trembled slightly. It seemed to be cheering, and obscure Dao patterns appeared. However, the treasure refining qi was quickly exhausted, causing the changes in the broken blade to fall silent once more. Even so, Lin Sun could clearly sense that the quality of the broken blade had improved slightly. Even if it was just a trace, it could be said to be shocking. One must know that the broken blade was Lin Sun's life-saint weapon, and it was nurtured in his body at almost all times. However, it would take at least 3 to 5 months for it to undergo such a transformation. Now that he possessed the treasure-refining chi, such a transformation only took a few breaths of time. The comparison between the two was naturally shocking. No wonder everyone is fighting to enter the Kunlun ruins. In the outside world, there's no such miraculous Tao Chi. Lin Sun praised. Ahu pursed his lips and smiled. This is just the ordinary treasure-refining chi. In the past, someone once seized a treasure-refining chi that was shaped like a black tortoise and had the power of a dragon. He raised a saint weapon in his hand to the level of a quasi-emperor weapon in one fell swoop. This matter caused a great sensation at that time. Lin Sun was excited. He remembered that among the treasures he had, the broken blade, the insignificant bow, and even the Tower of Endless Tao were all incomplete. If he could collect enough treasure-refining chi, could he repair them one by one? Next, the two continued to move forward. The treasure-refining place was like a small world, extremely vast. Since they entered, Lin Sun and the others had not met anyone else, so they were quite lucky. Walala, not long after, a mighty river appeared in their sight. The waves rolled and rolled up 1,000 layers of snow. Wait a moment. Suddenly, Lin Sun sensed something unusual under the coverage of his divine sense. He immediately stopped by the bank of the river. The river was rolling and the mist was rising. In the middle of the river, there was a snow-white lotus flower looming in the waves. If one didn't observe it carefully, it would be difficult to be found. This is a treasure-refining chi. Lin Sun's black eyes brightened. He recognized it. Ahu couldn't help but be surprised. Yes, it looks unusual. It has evolved into an ice lotus. Immediately, she showed a cautious look. Brother Lin, be careful when you take this thing later. This thing is so extraordinary, and the accompanying Kunlun divine flame is bound to be unusual. Lin Sun nodded. However, just when he was about to take action, a sword suddenly rang, whoosh. A silver sword chi came from the distant sky. It was 3,000 meters long, thick and dazzling. Its target was not Lin Sun and Ahu. It was the treasure-refining chi in the middle of the river. Boom! Before the sword chi got close, the river surface seemed to explode, and a dense divine flame rushed out. Each divine flame was the size of a fist, as clear as ice and snow, shining with frightening light. How powerful the sword chi was! But in an instant it was frozen by the overwhelming ice and snow divine flame, and then it exploded inch by inch. Retreat! Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and dodged with Ahu, because the group of ice divine flames rushed towards them aggressively after smashing the sword chi. Obviously, they were regarded as the culprits. Chapter 1759. However, as soon as Lin Sun and Ahu dodged, a sharp sword chi whistled from behind. Whoosh! The sword chi was silver, tearing a straight crack thousands of meters long in the void. It should be known that the law of heaven and earth in the treasure-refining place was extremely solid. Except for Peerless Great Sage, it was impossible for anyone else to release such power with a sword. In front of them, there was an overwhelming ice and snow flame. Behind them, there was a rainbow of sword chi sweeping over. Lin Sun and who could not advance or retreat. I'll deal with these flames. You kill the enemy. When Lin Sun transmitted his voice, he had already let out a long roar. His body suddenly stretched out and evolved into a big abyss, rumbling and crushing the void. In an instant, the sky full of ice and snow flames roared and collided with the big abyss. Bang! 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 How could Lin Sun, who attacked with all his strength, be ordinary? In an instant, more than a dozen ice and snow flames exploded and were crushed and swallowed by the big abyss. But Lin Sun also felt a chill in his body. The biting chill was so fierce that his face could not help but change slightly. This kind of ice and snow flame was obviously not ordinary. Without thinking too much, Lin Sun's body glowed with divine bravery and bravery. At the same time, with a deafening roar, the silver sword chi from behind was smashed by Ahu's palm. Her body was flowing with holy lavender divine light, and her eyes were full of killing intent. In her palm, wisps of light condensed and turned into a purple Taoist sword. In her spiritual awareness, she had already locked on the target, who was far away. The man was dressed in black, with a smooth forehead and pale golden skin. There was an ancient silver sword floating above his head. It was Wei Zia, the successor of Daluo Sword Mountain, a peerless great sage who ranked 279th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. Wei Zia, you really don't want to live. At this moment, Ahu was also irritated. Boom! Her figure broke through the air, her yellow dress fluttering, and the purple Taoist sword in her palm clanged and rushed out. Go back! Wei Zia's face was cold. With a stroke of his fingers, the ancient silver sword above his head whistled out. The sword swept out like the Milky Way. Rumble! The purple Dao sword collided with the silver ancient sword, and sword chi overflowed in all directions, causing the space within a radius of 3,000 meters to shatter and a rain of light to scatter. Wei Zia's expression changed drastically, unable to remain calm. His powerful and heavy sword that contained his entire body's cultivation was actually blocked. On the other hand, Ahu was like a flowing ray of light as she teleported over from the sky, and her pair of limpid eyes were filled with disdain and coldness. She flicked her fingers. Clang! Violet chi seethed and transformed into a Dao sword that was covered in dense and strange markings. It was a meter long and completely simple, yet its sword insight was powerful like the violet sky of the ages. Wei Zia's scalp was numb. How could he have imagined that the woman following Lin Sun was such a terrifying figure? Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Wei Zia did not even try to block the attack. He retreated with astonishing speed. But even then, his body was still struck by the powerful and simple sword. Puff! He staggered and coughed up blood. There was a terrifying sword wound on his back. The void where he had been standing was completely submerged in the terrifying purple sword chi, which was chaotic and turbulent, and seemed to be able to destroy the world. Wei Zia was horrified. He fled faster and faster, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Ahu was about to chase after him, but she heard a burst of complacent laughter. Lin Sun, thank you very much. I'll take this treasure refining Taoist chi away. The next time we meet, I'll definitely kill you. Ahu suddenly turned around and saw Kuan-Jilin, who was majestic and overbearing, flying away while laughing loudly over the river in the distance. Lin Sun, who was fighting fiercely with the group of snow divine flames, had no time to divert his attention to stop him. Looking at the center of the river, the treasure-refining Taoist chi that had evolved into an ice lotus had long disappeared. Obviously, it had been taken away by Kuan-Jilin. A touch of coldness appeared between Ahu's eyebrows. Thinking of what had happened just now, she instantly concluded that this was a well-prepared action. First, they used the power of snow divine flames to deal with her and Lin Sun. Then, with Wei Zia's help, she and Lin Sun were in a dilemma, and they were firmly pinned down. In the end, Kuan-Jilin took the opportunity to enter and easily took away the treasure-refining Taoist chi. In the process, if Ahu couldn't stop Wei Zia, Lin Sun would be attacked by Wei Zia and Kuan-Jilin while being attacked by snow divine flames. Similarly, if Lin Sun couldn't stop those snow divine flames, Kuan-Jilin wouldn't mind taking advantage of the situation to attack and add fuel to the fire. These thoughts flashed through Ahu's mind, and she couldn't help but feel a strong desire to kill them. These two figures on the Starry Sky Great Sage list colluded with each other. Did they really think that she and Lin Sun were easy to bully? Next time they met, she would definitely cut off their heads. Don't come over. When Ahu wanted to help, she was stopped by Lin Sun. Boom. At this moment, a fire suddenly appeared above Lin Sun's head and turned into a flame cauldron. For a moment, Ahu's mind trembled, and she seemed to see a strange scene in a trance. Between heaven and earth, everything was silent, except for a fire cauldron that was burning fiercely. The sky, the earth, the latitude, the sun, the moon, and the stars were all incinerated. And that fire cauldron became the only constant and immortal thing between heaven and earth. When Ahu woke up, she saw that the fire cauldron was glowing and swallowed up all the snow divine flames around Lin Sun. Ahu's eyes widened and she felt incredible. A fire turned into an eternal fire cauldron, which appeared in the air and suppressed all the snow divine flames. This was undoubtedly shocking. The power of the snow divine flames caught Lin Sun, a great sage, off guard, and he couldn't resolve it immediately. However, when Ahu wanted to observe carefully, the fire disappeared into Lin Sun's body again. In the field, Lin Sun was also stunned. After a while, he suppressed his inner surprise and looked at Ahu, saying, "I didn't expect it either." Ahu said, "Is that the original Tao fire you absorbed when you were in the Peerless King realm?" Lin Sun nodded and said, "In the past, there was a divine underworld ancient well in the apex domain. In the tomb world under the ancient well, I found this ball of Taoist fire. This was, of course, the wonderful Tao fire. All those years ago, before this ball of profundity Tao flame was subdued, it was surrounded by a total of 5 connate Tao flames, and they were stationed near the profundity Tao flame like subjects. These 5 congenital Tao fire were the eternal silence Tao fire that had turned into a black jade ruler, the dustless Tao fire that had turned into a white jade book, the 5 inclusive Tao fire that had turned into a 5-colored deer, the golden scorching Tao fire that had turned into a golden lamp, the purple glory Tao fire that had turned into a purple painting. However, in the end, Lin Sun only kept the wonderful Tao fire and gave the other 5 congenital Tao fire to Old Toad, Alu, Zhao Jingxian, Little Silver, and the Big Black Bird. At that time, Lin Sun had subdued the wonderful Tao fire for the sake of tempering his natal weapon. After he broke through to the Saint Realm, he had never used this mysterious Tao fire again. Who would have thought that in this place of refining treasures, the wonderful Tao fire that had been silent for a long time seemed to have been awakened in the fierce battle just now and surged out. This caught Lin Sun off guard and he was surprised. He still clearly remembered that when he subdued the wonderful Tao fire, there was another layer of invisible restrictive force that turned into a line of bird seal Taoist characters. If you want to obtain this fire, you must be stained with karma. If you want to solve karma, you must understand the wonders of the world. No matter who you are, may I ask if you are willing to follow this fire to the Ruins of Wonders? The Ruins of Wonders was the most mysterious of the 4 great ancient ruins of gods. This also made Lin Sun understand that the moment he subdued this fire, he had already formed karma with this fire. In the future, sooner or later, he would have to go to the Ruins of Wonders. Moreover, besides the wonderful Tao fire, Lin Sun still had a treasure related to the Ruins of Wonders, the painting of a Taoist riding an ox. It was a rusty and mottled piece of copper with a painting inscribed on it. An old man in a Taoist robe rode on the back of a green ox in a leisurely manner while looking up at the sky. This mysterious piece of copper was obtained by Lin Sun in the West Sea world all those years ago. At that time, he was pursued by the Black Demon Dog clan, and he fled deep into the mountains to save a blood leopard. In order to repay Lin Sun's kindness, the blood leopard gave this piece of copper to Lin Sun. It was also through this clue that Lin Sun saw the corpse of a cultivator that had passed away in meditation. Thus, he found out that this cultivator intended to rely on this piece of copper to search for the Ruins of Wonders all those years ago, but he didn't find it in the end after searching bitterly for 48,000 years. On the other hand, This piece of copper that was inscribed with the painting of a Taoist riding an ox had always been kept by Lin Sun until now. In short, the two treasures in Lin Sun's possession, the wonderful Tao fire and the painting of a Taoist riding an ox, were related to the most mysterious ruins of wonders. It looks like you have far more secrets than I imagined. There was a trace of strangeness in Ahu's beautiful eyes. If the news that a ball of original Tao fire could actually subdue the Kunlun divine flame that was feared by others was spread out, it would definitely cause a great uproar. Aren't you the same? Lin Sun smiled. When it came to the number of secrets, Ahu was bound to be no less than him. Ahu smiled sweetly and said, "Let's not talk about this. Just now Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin worked together and snatched away a strand of treasure-refining Taoist qi that originally belonged to us. I won't be able to swallow my anger if I don't take revenge for this." Lin Sun said resolutely, "The next time we meet, I will definitely kill these two people." How could Lin Sun be happy when Ahu was unhappy in her heart? Wei Zia was injured by my sword, and his aura has been captured by me. Why don't we kill this guy first to vent our anger? Said Ahu. That would be best. Lin Sun agreed without hesitation. Immediately, the two changed their route and started to act. At the same time, Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin had already gathered together and were flying in the void. We all underestimated the woman beside Lin Sun. Her combat strength is so strong that even I feel threatened. Wei Zifu's expression was gloomy. Thinking of the sword that was as powerful as the eternal purple clouds, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. It seems that we have to change our strategy. Kuan Jilin's eyes flickered. After a moment of silence, he said, "Let's go, I will take you to see someone." Chapter 1761. Who? Wei Zia frowned. Yan Chunjun of the Universe Taoism Court. Kuan Jilin said quickly, "This guy is determined to get the flying immortal token. I believe he will be happy to cooperate with us." Yan Chunjun. Wei Zia's eyes flickered and he said, "Well, there's no harm in giving it a try." It was absolutely not difficult for him and Kuan Jilin to deal with Lin Sun alone. But with the addition of Ahu, both of them began to feel that it was difficult. If they could bring Yan Chunjun with them, they would have a much better chance of winning. "Let's go, I know where Yan Chunjun is." After making the decision, Kuan Jilin took action without hesitation. Boom! The glow of the Tao rumbled near the crater of an enormous volcano while divine radiance swept through the surroundings, and an intense battle was erupting there. "How dare you snatch the thing that I want? You don't know how to write the word death." Yan Chunjun sneered. He was dressed in linen, with long light golden hair, a strong body, and a waterfall-like sword qi flowing all over his body, blazing and dazzling. His opponents were a group of young men and women, who were extraordinary in appearance and extremely powerful, led by two peerless great sages. However, under such a situation where they had the advantage in numbers, it was Yan Chunjun who occupied the advantage instead. He executed an enormous golden sword that pointed towards the heavens and the earth, and he swung it in an imposing manner while suppressing everyone present with an extremely terrifying might. Those men and women were completely suppressed, and all of them looked extremely serious. "Let's go." In the end, these men and women fled with unwillingness. Yan Chunjun stared at the disappearing figures of these opponents with a cold look, and then said with a murderous look, "A bunch of trash." He turned his head and looked under the volcano. There, lava erupted like a dancing fire dragon, full of the aura of burning the sky and the earth. But if you looked carefully, you could find that in the depths of the lava, there was a fire bird combing its feathers in the sea of fire. Its figure was ethereal and looming. This fire bird was manifested by a kind of treasure-refining Tao Qi. Because of this, Yan Chunjun didn't chase after those opponents just now. Otherwise, with his cold temperament, he would never let it go. Who? When Yan Chunjun was about to take action and absorb the treasure-refining Tao Qi, he suddenly frowned, and a strong evil spirit flashed in his eyes. Brother Yin. Kuan Jilin appeared. He had a domineering temperament, but when he faced Yen Chunjun, his expression was one of respect, and he retracted his aura. Greetings, fellow Taoist Yen. At the same time, Wei Zia also arrived and cupped his hands in greeting. However, Yen Chunjun directly disregarded him and seemed to be extremely rude, and he didn't conceal his contempt at all. This caused Wei Zia's expression to stiffen. His heart was filled with rage, and he felt as if he had been slapped in the face. But in the end, Wei Zia managed to restrain himself, because his opponent was Yen Chunjun. He was ranked 83rd on the Starry Sky Great Sage ranking, a core successor of the Qian Kuan Dao Court, and a ruthless great sage. The most astonishing thing was that Yen Chunjun had only been cultivating for less than 200 years. Among all the peerless great saints in the heavens, Yen Chunjun was undoubtedly an extremely young and monstrous existence. No matter who it was, no one dared to underestimate him. Just the name Yen Chunjun alone was enough to cause the expressions of most people in the same generation to change. What, you also want to steal my treasure crafting chi? Yen Chunjun's gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stared at Kuan Jilin, looking like he would start a fight at any moment. Brother Yen, you've misunderstood. We're here to discuss something with Brother Yen. Kuan Jilin said and told Yen Chunjun his plan. It's just to kill a little thing from the ancient desolation region. Is it worth mobilizing so many people? You, Kuan Jilin, are the successor of the ancient desolation Dao Court, a pure-blooded descendant of the imperial Kuan clan. Don't you think you're overestimating that little thing by doing this? Yen Chunjun's expression was one of disapproval. Brother Yen, there's something you don't know. Perhaps there's nothing to be afraid of, but he has a woman with extremely terrifying combat strength by his side. Kuan Jilin told Yen Chunjun about how Ahu injured Wei Zia with one strike. Yen Chunjun's expression turned serious. Although he looked down on Wei Zia, he had to admit that the latter was an extremely powerful and ruthless person. Being able to be ranked on the Starry Sky Great Sage ranking was enough to prove how extraordinary Wei Zia was. Yen Chunjun thought that if he wanted to injure Wei Zia with one strike, he would have to use his full strength. Brother Kuan, can you tell who that woman is? Yen Chunjun asked. Kuan Jilin shook his head. So, this woman is probably from the ancient desolation region, just like Lin Sun. Do you think she also has the flying fairy token? Yen Chunjun's eyes were filled with obscure light. It should be so. Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia both nodded. Well, I promise to cooperate with you. After I absorb the treasure refining chi, I'll go with you to kill Lin Sun. Yen Chunjun agreed. He needed the flying fairy token, and Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia needed Lin Sun's life. What a wondrous treasure refining Dao Qi! Kuan Jilin looked at the bottom of the volcano and exclaimed. The treasure refining Qi that could manifest the vision of birds was definitely a treasure. It's really extraordinary. Wei Zia's eyes were also filled with surprise. Not long ago, he and Kuan Jilin worked together to snatch food from the tiger's mouth and snatch the treasure refining Taoist Qi in the form of ice and snow lotus, which was originally targeted by Lin Sun. But compared with the treasure refining Qi in front of them, it was slightly inferior. Yen Chunjun smiled slightly and said, the more extraordinary the treasure refining Qi is, the more terrifying the Kunlun divine flame will be nearby. Please step back to avoid being affected. Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia looked at each other and retreated far away in silence. Yen Chunjun was completely relieved. He was really worried that these two guys would have some evil thoughts after seeing such a treasure. Yen Chunjun didn't hesitate and directly took action. He waved his sleeve, and the dense sword chi turned into a bright and blazing sword chi net, covering the firebird under the volcano. What an exquisite swordsmanship! Wei Zia's eyes lit up. Although he was annoyed by Yen Chunjun's rude behavior just now, He had to admit that Yan Chuanjuan's attainments in swordsmanship were indeed amazing and superb. Boom! Under the volcano there was a sudden roar and the earth shook. A group of magnificent divine flames suddenly rushed out of the sea of lava, scarlet like blood, exuding a terrible destructive aura that made people's scalp numb. The sword chi net that Yan Chunjun had enveloped was instantly melted. Yan Chunjun sneered, and a cryptic Tao sound came from his lips. He formed a seal with his 5 fingers and suddenly pressed down. Boom! This was a strange and simple sword seal. The front was Qian and the back was Kuan. As soon as it descended, it was as if the power of heaven and earth was drawn in, and its power was vast and boundless. Instantly, the group of scarlet divine flames that rushed out were suppressed and collapsed inch by inch. Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia couldn't help but gasp. What a powerful swordsmanship technique! Previously, they had heard of Yan Chuanjuan's strength, but that was just hearsay. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, they realized that Yan Chunjun, who was ranked 83rd on the Starry Sky True Sage board, was far stronger than they had imagined. Whoosh! But at the same time that Yan Chunjun suppressed the group of scarlet divine flames, a figure suddenly appeared, teleported in the air, and reached out to grab the firebird. "You're courting death." Divine light shot out of Yan Chuanjuan's eyes. He waved his sleeve, and a patch of golden lightning intertwined and transformed into a lightning spear that was thrown out. Boom! This attack was undoubtedly powerful, but as soon as it got close to the figure, it was obliterated inch by inch, and a rain of light splashed. One could vaguely see a large abyss floating around that figure. Yan Chuanjuan's face darkened. "It's you, bastard!" At the same time, Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia both reacted and recognized the identity of the figure. It was Lin Sun. "Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Lin Sun said slowly. He was not slow, and had already taken the opportunity to collect the treasure refining Tao Qi that had evolved into the vision of the Firebird. Kill. Yan Chunjun attacked without hesitation, extremely furious. Previously, he had planned to kill Lin Sun with Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia after collecting the treasure refining Tao Qi. But he had never thought that Lin Sun would take the initiative to appear, and even snatch the treasure refining Tao Qi that he had long regarded as his exclusive property. Boom! A giant golden sword appeared in Yan Chuanjuan's palm. As he waved it, the sky trembled violently, and the void burst like silk. The power was amazing. The sword Qi contained the momentum of the universe, and it seemed to be able to destroy mountains and rivers and cleanse the world. This was the universal Haoran sword. One of the most important inheritances of the universe Taoism court, it regarded the world as its own sword, and commanded the general trend of the universe like the ruler of the universe. At the same time, Lin Sun did not retreat, but rushed forward, appearing extremely powerful. Clang! In his palm, the Avicii sword, as black as hell, swept out, making the world suddenly dark, as if it had fallen into the eternal night. Boom! In an instant, the two of them fought fiercely. The sword Qi intertwined, and the sword intent competed, causing the world to tremble and the sun and moon to lose their light. Attack! Kill! Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia also attacked. The prey actually took the initiative to provoke them, which surprised and angered them. Swish! What was even swifter than them was a strand of sword Qi that was powerful like the violet heavens of the ages, and it slashed horizontally through space. A Hu came, her yellow dress fluttering, and a pair of eyes like autumn water were full of cold, killing intent. It was her. Wei Zia's expression changed abruptly. Kuan Jilin let out a loud roar, and a whirlpool-like blade buzzed madly as it collided with the murderous sword Qi. Bang! In the next moment, Kuan Jilin's figure staggered, and his skin was shaken to the point his eyes couldn't help but narrow. "You two are mine," Ahu said coldly. Ahu said coldly. Her body was flowing with a vigorous and blazing purple sword will, and she waved her hand. Buzz! A strand of violet sword chi condensed in the void and whistled out. Quan Jilin and Wei Zia's expressions were gloomy, and they couldn't help but be furious to be looked down upon by a woman. Kill! Both of them exerted their true strength and charged forward. For a time, the world was shaking and the ground was trembling. The surging Taoist light, the rumbling sword chi, and the treasure light caused this area to be in complete chaos. Chapter 1763. The huge golden sword swept across the sky. The sword chi was thick and dazzling, and it was entwined with the terrible power of the law of thunder, which disturbed the world. Yan Chunjun was very strong. He was like a dominator, and his sword was like the universe. His attainments in swordsmanship were exquisite and vigorous. He deserved to be a peerless swordsman of the great saint realm who was famous on the starry sky ancient path. But under his violent killing, Lin Sun could always disintegrate his attacks one by one. He couldn't help but be surprised. Even if a young man from the ancient desolation domain became the first in the 9-region battlefield, he was not taken seriously by Yan Chunjun at all. It was not because of arrogance and conceit. It was because of the absolute confidence and foundation of being in the top 100 of the Starry Sky Great Saint list from the 6 orthodoxies. But after fighting with Lin Sun, Yan Chunjun found that Lin Sun was an exception. Even if Lin Sun was not from the top forces of the Starry Sky Ancient Path, his combat strength was amazing. In Yan Chunjun's view, Lin Sun could easily be ranked on the Starry Sky Great Saint list with his current combat strength. This was undoubtedly incredible, since when could such an extraordinary figure come out from the territory under the starry sky? It was rare. It could be described as a once-in-a-million-years encounter. Gradually, Yan Chunjun had no time to think about it. His expression gradually became dignified because the strength Lin Sun showed had made him feel a kind of pressure. Boom! Lin Sun's expression was calm, neither sad nor happy. His tall figure was rolling with the dazzling light of Tao, which illuminated the sky. He was barehanded, and his every move was simple and natural, without any smoke or fire. But every blow he made had the power to devour the sky and crush the earth. Looking from a distance, his whole body was like a great abyss, moving horizontally in the void, sweeping all the way with overwhelming power. Clang! Not long after, with Lin Sun's punch, the golden sword buzzed violently and almost got out of Yan Chunjun's control. The surging and powerful fist force was like a raging and crushing abyss converging into one fist, which made Yan Chunjun's body shake violently, his blood and chi surging all over his body, and his face couldn't help changing. What a terrifying combat strength of the Great Way! The contempt and surprise in Yan Chunjun's heart disappeared at this moment, and his face was full of seriousness. This was a great enemy. Although his cultivation base was only at the peak of the early eminent saint stage, it was obvious that he had already created his own technique and possessed an incredibly strong foundation. Clang clang clang! Sword howls surged like the tide as Yan Chunjun shouted loudly and utilized his trump card. The enormous golden sword swiftly transformed into 99 golden flying swords, and they were like a group of golden WRMs that were imposing and fierce as they blotted out the sky. The dazzling golden sword intent exuded the seemingly corporeal power of the great sage laws, causing mountains, rivers, and all living things to be dyed golden. 99 Swords of the Way, I am immortal within and without the universe. Book of the 9 Swords. This was a technique that Yan Chunjun had created. It used the inheritance of the Universe Tao Quartz, Universe Righteous Sword, as the core and fused everything Yan Chunjun had learned to create a technique. The 99 flying swords represented 99 core profundities of the Sword Tao, and they formed boundless and eternally grand sword moves. For a time, sword cries surged through the heavens and the earth, and the surroundings trembled. Yan Chunjun's expression was cold, and his eyes were dazzling like the sun. Bang bang bang! Lin Sun's attack was instantly smashed by the flying swords. The monstrous sword intent released by the 99 flying swords actually blocked the swallowing and crushing of the abyss. I only want the flying immortal token. As long as you hand it over, I can spare your life. Otherwise, you will die next. Yan Chuanjuan's voice was rumbling, and his murderous spirit was monstrous. He was like a decisive, peerless sword immortal. As he spoke, he didn't stop attacking. The 99 flying swords whistled through the air, derived endless mysteries of the Great Way, which were fierce, and tore the void into pieces. Lin Sun raised the corner of his mouth with a playful smile. You are just a whetstone. How dare you be so arrogant? It's better to be a stepping stone. The purpose of a whetstone was to temper one's technique. In the previous battle with Yan Chunjun, it should be the first time that Lin Sun met an opponent who could fight with him since he stepped into the Great Sage realm. Therefore, he regarded Yan Chunjun as a whetstone in the battle. As for Liu Beigu, who had fought with Lin Sun at the beginning, although he was also a great sage, his combat strength was so weak that he was not even qualified to be a whetstone. Yan Chuanjuan's face darkened. A whetstone? A stepping stone? What did this guy think he was? At this moment, Yan Chunjun only felt that his dignity was being provoked and trampled on like never before. He was so angry that he laughed and said, "Little thing, I will send you to hell now." Clatter, dense golden flying swords shot out like a tide, just like a divine rainbow piercing through the sky and the earth, with unparalleled sharpness. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun's momentum suddenly changed, and his whole person had a kind of deep and boundless charm. In his hand, the sword of Avicii gently stabbed out. In the void, the sword of Avicii seemed to open the gate of hell, and the light of the eternal night turned into a sword intent that could swallow everything. Wherever it passed, mountains and rivers were buried, and the void fell into oblivion. Crack! A golden flying sword suddenly burst into pieces, and the flying rain of light was annihilated. Yan Chuanjuan's pupils suddenly shrank. But before he could react, with a burst of cracking, the golden flying swords all over the sky burst into pieces like paper paste. Yan Chunjun seemed to be struck by lightning. His body shook violently, blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his face turned pale in an instant. However, it was not over yet. The sword strike that stabbed out like the darkness of hell didn't lose momentum in the slightest, and it rumbled as it arrived. It was obviously a sword chi, but it could swallow everything. The strange and terrible scene made Wei Zia and Kuan Jilin, who were fighting fiercely next to him, shudder. What a terrible sword! Who couldn't help showing a strange expression. Bang! Yan Chunjun dodged without hesitation. The void where he stood collapsed, and the light, dust, and haze were all annihilated. Yan Chunjun gasped. This guy was only at the early stage of Great Saint, but why was his combat power so powerful? Up! Yan Chunjun took out a shining purple awl, on which 2 ancient Taoist runes of destruction were engraved, and it was filled with wisps of the aura of Emperor Realm. Purple light, all of destruction. It was a holy treasure enhanced with the aura of Emperor Realm. It was also one of Yan Chuanjuan's trump cards. Almost all the experts who came to Kunlun ruins this time had prepared all kinds of life-saving means. Yan Chunjun, a core descendant from the 6 Tao courts, naturally had no lack of similar treasures. Buzz! The small purple awl soared into the air and slashed down lightly. A ray of light shot out like a bolt of lightning. It was as though it had teleported, its speed was inconceivably fast. Ahu's heart suddenly tightened. But to her surprise, the small purple awl was suppressed by a sacred golden light before it could get close to Lin Sun. It stopped in the void and couldn't move forward. Looking at Lin Sun again, a pagoda that seemed to be made of glazed gold had appeared above his head, releasing a vast and mysterious aura. This, Yan Chuanjuan's face changed completely. It was a holy treasure that contained the aura of Emperor Realm. He was a little reluctant to use it to kill Lin Sun. Unexpectedly, the treasure was fixed in place in an instant, like a fly stuck in a big net, unable to break free. Bang! Without giving Yen Chunjun a chance to react, the small purple all directly exploded, and a rain of light overflowed like a waterfall, sweeping through the void. Lin Sun had already rushed over. His black hair fluttered, and his eyes were cold like lightning. Carrying the Avicii sword, he seemed to be dragging a hell forward, wanting to bury everything in the world. Yen Chunjun was a little flustered and was about to say something. Lin Sun had already slashed out with his sword without hesitation. It was a simple move of slashing to the extreme. It was as if all the gods and Buddhas, the universe, and the mountains and rivers in front of it would be flattened by the sword. This was a kind of sword momentum, an unparalleled sword momentum. Yen Chunjun was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. He almost used all his strength to resist, and layers of treasure light burst out around his body. It was the power of defensive treasures and defensive Taoism. Even his divine soul was protected by the magical armor. But under this sword, his attack was instantly crushed. Rumble! The divine light burst out like muffled thunder. As Lin Sun's sword slashed down, the defensive treasures and defensive Taoism on Yen Chunjun's body were split layer by layer, producing a deafening roar. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, it would be hard to imagine that the power of this sword would be so terrible. It should be known that Yen Chunjun was not an ordinary person. He was one of the core successors of the Universe Taoism court. He was also a powerful and cold swordsman who was ranked in the top 100 of the Starry Sky Great Saints. But under Lin Sun's sword, he was completely crushed. In the end, even though Yen Chunjun was able to resist this sword strike in the end, his entire body was blasted flying. The terrifying sword chi even tore open a horrifying injury on his chest, causing blood to flow while his bones were faintly visible. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose, and he screamed. His body was broken, and he was seriously injured and dying. This peerlessly shocking and bloody scene caused Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia's bodies to feel cold, and their faces turned pale with astonishment. How could this be possible? That was Yen Chunjun. How could he not be a match for Lin Sun? Without any hesitation, Lin Sun moved and suddenly appeared over Yen Chunjun. Then, he stepped on Yen Chunjun's head. "How dare you?" Yen Chunjun roared with his eyes wide open. This step was undoubtedly to trample on his self-esteem and body, with an undisguised sense of humiliation. But at this time, he was seriously injured and dying, and resistance was futile. Lin Sun's figure was swift and fierce. Like an overlord descending, he stepped on Yen Chunjun's whole body, making him fall from the void and hit the ground. Boom! The ground cracked, unable to bear the power of Lin Sun's step. His moon-white clothes fluttered in the wind. He looked calm, but his aura was like that of a devil, with the intention of looking down on the world. Under Lin Sun's feet, Yen Chunjun's skin was cracked. He lay on the ground on all fours, and his head was stepped on the ground by Lin Sun. He was extremely miserable and embarrassed. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and said softly, "Well, whether you like it or not, in front of me, you are really just a stepping stone." As he spoke, he looked at Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia, who were fighting fiercely with Ahu in the distance. His eyes were full of coldness. Chapter 1765. Stepping Stone. Yen Chunjun was furious when Lin Sun said these 3 words before. He thought it was a provocation to his dignity. Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia both sneered, thinking that Lin Sun was too arrogant and boastful. Obviously, he was tired of living. But now, it had come true. Even Ahu was slightly stunned. Of course, she believed that Lin Sun was not boasting. However, she did not expect Yen Chunjun, who was ranked in the top 100 of the Starry Sky Great Saint ranking, to be defeated so quickly. "How dare you?" Kuan Jilin bellowed. "Release Yen Chunjun. If anything happens to him, the entire Qiankuan Dao court will not forgive you. Wei Zia was also anxious. He spoke sternly and threatened. Lin Sun nodded. Crack! Yan Chuanjuan's head was forcefully crushed beneath his feet, and both his body and spirit were destroyed. Yu, Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia were so shocked that their heads almost exploded. Who was Yan Chunjun? On the ancient starry sky path, even saint kings and quasi-emperors of the older generation did not dare to try and kill Yan Chunjun. This was because the consequences were too severe. They would be targeted by one of the 6 great Dao courts, the Heaven and Earth Dao Court. At that time, even a sub-emperor would not be enough. The more one was born and raised on the starry sky ancient path, the more they knew how great the influence of the 6 major Dao courts was. Its resources and reserves were terrifying, and its might was so formidable that it was sufficient to affect the course of the entire ancient path in the starry sky. But now, Lin Sun didn't even bother to think about it. He crushed Yan Chuanjuan's head with one foot casually, as if he were crushing a watermelon. Who would have thought of this? You're finished. No matter who you are, no matter which force you have behind you, you will definitely suffer the wrath of the Heaven and Earth Dao Court in the future. Kuan Jilin shouted. He still didn't dare to believe it, because Yan Chuanjuan's death was too great of a shock to him. The same went for Wei Zia. Could it be that you think you can leave this place alive? Hu was displeased, and her eyes were frighteningly cold. These 2 scoundrels were fighting him, yet they were still concerned about Yan Chuanjuan's life and death. They were clearly not taking him seriously at all. Boom! Her attacks became increasingly fierce. At the same time, Lin Sun also broke through the air and arrived. However, right when he was about to attack, he suddenly frowned, stopped moving, and turned around to look into the distance. A seemingly material aura silently locked onto him, and it was piercingly cold like snow and emitted a terrifying aura. This made Lin Sun instinctively feel threatened. In the distant sky, a pure and holy white rain of light scattered down, and it formed the outline of a beautiful figure. She wore white clothes, had a golden belt around her waist, and her black hair flowed down like a waterfall. Her features were picturesque, her skin like ice and bones like jade, and her eyes were clear like a pure spring. She was like a celestial maiden that had descended from the heavens to the mortal world, misty and chilly. When Qingxue, she was the successor of the Panwu Dao Court, a peerless beauty ranked 3rd on the Starry Sky Beauties list. She was regarded as a peerless beauty that was hard to come by even in 10,000 years. A group of men and women clustered around her, and they caused her to seem even more extraordinary. Her appearance was beautiful, and her graceful bearing caused the heavens and the earth to dim in comparison. Be careful of that chick. She might seem to be ranked lower than Yan Chunjun on the Starry Sky Great Saint board, but I can sense that she's even more dangerous than him. Hu quickly transmitted a message to Lin Sun. Lin Sun remembered that when Qingxue was ranked 93rd on the Starry Sky Great Saint board, which was indeed a lot lower than Yan Chunjun. But this ranking was made more than 90 years ago. This also meant that in the past 90 years, when Qingxue had obviously made rapid progress in the cultivation of the Great Tao, and she had left Yan Chunjun far behind. In less than 5 years, the Starry Sky Great Saint board will be re-ranked. At that time, when Qingxue's ranking will also rise. These thoughts flashed through Lin Sun's mind, and he said with a trace of coldness, "Are you also here for the fairy token?" This was very rude and straightforward. This caused the disciples of the Panwu Dao Court to be unable to help but frown. In the past, which cultivator didn't address Wen Qingxue respectfully as Fairy Qingxue? But this guy seemed to be very rude. Sure enough, he came from a small place like the ancient Desolation territory. He has no manners at all. No matter how strong he is, he's still a rude and boorish man. Someone couldn't help sneering. This was a young man in a luxurious robe. He was handsome, elegant, and extraordinary, and carried an innate sense of pride. Well said, Senior Brother Nye Tian. Those men and women nodded secretly. The young man in a splendid robe was called Nye Tian, and he was also an outstanding talent from an extraordinary family with extremely strong combat power. In this group, his status and strength were only a little lower than Wen Qingshue's. Lin Sun glanced at Nye Tian and spat out 2 words from his lips. "Do you want to die?" Nye Tian was stunned, and then his eyes burst with cold light and he said, "You," before he finished his words, he stopped abruptly. It was because a vigorous finger force moved through the void, crushing the heavens as it arrived. Great divination, void-breaking finger, boundless world. Even if we are separated by a vast distance, I will kill you with 1 finger. Nye Tian didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so overbearing that he directly attacked without any nonsense. The other successors of the Panwu Dao court were also dumbfounded. In the past, anyone who knew their identity was either afraid of them or respectful. Who would be so rude and rude like Lin Sun? Rumble, the vast finger force stretched across, and the grain on it was like the traces of the Great Way, intertwining with the law. It was like the finger of the god of outer heaven, as big as a mountain, with infinite power. The most terrible thing was that because it contained the mystery of the infinite devouring scripture, it gave people a feeling that all the spirits in the world would be crushed and devoured under this finger. Nye Tian's heart twitched fiercely, and his face changed dramatically. He sensed a fatal threat. He suddenly let out a loud shout and pressed out his palm. The palm force was like a coiling dragon and snake, majestic and dignified, with the intention of swallowing mountains and rivers. Panwu Dragon and Snake Force. One of the sect-guarding legacies of the Panwu Dao court. With a palm strike, the dragon and snake rose, overturned rivers and seas, and reversed yin and yang. Accompanied by the roar, the void shook, and the world was collapsing. Clang! Suddenly, Wen Qingxue frowned, and an illusory sword qi swept up and slashed at the place where the finger force and the palm force collided. It was just a single sword strike, yet it erased this collision into nothingness. At the same time, Nye Tian's figure shook violently as if he was drunk. His cheeks turned red and the blood in his body churned. He was so upset that he almost coughed up blood. Looking at Lin Sun again, he stood in the void, his clothes fluttering and his bearing calm. 1 blow, it was obvious who was superior. The faces of the descendants of the Panwu Dao court were already gloomy. How could they not see that if Wen Qingxue hadn't intervened in time, even if Nye Tian could have blocked this blow, he would have been in a very difficult situation, and might even have been injured. Despicable! Nye Tian was embarrassed and shouted. He was very dissatisfied, thinking that he was caught off guard by Lin Sun's sneak attack. Lin Sun smiled, and his eyes were full of undisguised contempt. If it wasn't for someone helping you, are you sure you could have blocked it? Nye Tian wanted to say something more, but he was stopped by Wen Qingxue. Let Kuan Jilin go, and I will let you leave. She spoke, looking at Lin Sun with her clear eyes. Her voice was clear and melodious, like the sound of nature. Lin Sun was stunned. He didn't expect that when Qingxue intervened, not for the flying immortal token, but to save Kuan Jilin. In the distance, Kuan Jilin, who was fighting with Ah Hu, was also stunned. Immediately, he thought of something, and a look of jealousy flashed between his eyebrows. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Is it because of my elder brother that you want to save me? If so, you'd better leave as soon as possible." When Qingxue frowned slightly, raised her hand and drew a finger. Swish! An illusory and agile sword qi appeared and slashed at Ah Hu. Lin Sun's figure moved in the air, and he grabbed out with his palm. With a bang, the sword qi was annihilated and swallowed. It seemed easy, but he was shocked in his heart. What a strong sword intent! This sword was ethereal and indifferent, but it contained the power of the Great Way, which was extremely pure and sharp. It made his skin feel tingling, and he had to use all his strength to resolve it. At this time, the descendants of the Panwu Dao court looked like they had seen a ghost. This guy blocked the great freedom Panwu sword intent of senior sister Wen Qingxue so casually? Nie Tian's face changed. Great freedom Panwu Dao. This was the supreme secret scripture of the Panwu Dao court, and only a small group of people in the entire sect possessed the qualifications to comprehend and grasp this inheritance. In the entire starry sky ancient path, it could be considered to be a supreme scripture that was at the top. Anyone who cultivated this scripture would be able to exert combat strength that far surpassed their peers and possess inconceivable abilities. Wen Qingxue's sword just now seemed to be understated, but its power was enough to easily kill a peerless great saint. But Lin Sun blocked it. And he was not injured. For a moment the way they looked at Lin Sun changed. How could this rude man from the ancient desolation realm be so powerful? Only Wen Qingxue looked calm. Her black hair was like ink, her white clothes were whiter than snow, and her figure was ethereal like a fairy. She said in a cold voice, "If we fight now, you will be seriously injured even if you don't die. Moreover, the movement here has already attracted many covetous eyes. If you don't leave now, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave later." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and suddenly smiled. "Ah Hu, let's go." After saying that, he turned to look at Ah Hu. His change of attitude was so fast that many people were stunned. But Ah Hu seemed to have understood, and without any hesitation, he immediately withdrew himself. However, before Wei Zia could breathe a sigh of relief, a dazzling light suddenly appeared above his head. It was an extremely delicate flying dagger. Puff! The flying dagger flashed, and a bloody head was thrown into the air. Wei Zia's eyes widened in disbelief and confusion. How could there be such a horrible flying dagger in this world? Bang! The next moment, his body fell to the ground. His vitality was exhausted, and his soul was obliterated. He died completely. At the same time, Ah Hu's pretty face turned pale, and she said in her heart, "Treasure, come back." In the void, the delicate flying dagger turned into a wisp of white light and suddenly swept into her palm. Vaguely, there seemed to be a gourd totem in Ah Hu's jade-like palm, which was looming and mysterious. All this happened almost in an instant. When they saw the bloody scene of Wei Zia suddenly being killed, everyone present was shocked. Chapter 1767. The flying dagger flashed, and his head fell to the ground. Wei Zia, a true sword cultivator of the Daluo Sword Mountain and a peerless great saint on the Starry Sky Great Saint list, was killed so easily. That bloody and clean scene seemed to be exceptionally shocking. The most frightening thing was that from the beginning, no one had noticed how the flying dagger had swept out and how it had disappeared. When Qingxue's clothes fluttered in the wind, and her usually calm face revealed a rare look of shock. Corn Jilin shuddered, and his hair stood on end. An unprecedented fear spread throughout his body, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. If that slash had landed on him, would he still be alive? Even Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. There was no doubt that this mysterious and terrifying flying dagger was Ah Hu's trump card. As for the others present, they were so shocked that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. A peerless sword cultivator whose name shook the starry sky ancient path was killed just like that. The impact was so great that it could shock even ghosts and gods. "Let's go," Lin Sun said and left with Ah Hu. Whoosh, the void tumbled, and the two figures soon disappeared. "Senior sister Qingxue, are we just going to let them go?" Nie Tian was unwilling to give up, and he broke the silence. "The danger is unpredictable. This place is only the periphery of the Kunlun ruins after all. It's not worth it to fight now." When Qingxue had regained her usual calmness, she glanced around with her clear eyes. Moreover, whether it's Lin Sun or the woman beside him, they're all tough bones. Everyone was silent. Earlier, they had witnessed how Lin Sun had killed Yan Chunjun as a stepping stone, and how Lin Sun had easily blocked Wen Qingxue's attack. The bloody scene of Ah Hu chopping Wei Zia with a flying dagger still left a lingering fear in their hearts. If they really fought with Lin Sun and the others at this time, it would be hard to say who would win. How could a young man from the ancient Desolation realm be so powerful? Someone's voice was filled with a trace of surprise and disappointment. Humph. No matter how powerful they are, they're destined to suffer. Many people have their eyes on the flying immortal token in their hand. Nie Tian's face turned cold. It's impossible for you to defeat Lin Sun by yourself. Do you want to join us? When Qingxue looked at Kuan Jilin in the distance, Kuan Jilin gritted his teeth and said, "There's no need." With that, he turned around and left. When his back was facing Wen Qingxue and the others, Kuan Jilin's expression was filled with hatred and viciousness. In his mind, he couldn't help but imagine the figure of a man whose back seemed to be able to support the heavens and the earth. He stood with his hands behind his back like the ruler of the world. Kuan Star River. He was the #1 core descendant of the Kuan clan, a terrifying existence who had long since stepped into the Saint King realm. His name had long since spread throughout the universe. He was also Kuan Jilin's elder brother. However, in Kuan Jilin's heart, his famous elder brother was like a shadow that made him feel respect, fear, and even hatred. Kuan Jilin knew that Wen Qingxue only helped because he was Kuan Xinghe's little brother. She didn't really care about him. Wen Qingxue, sooner or later I will get you. I will let you know that I, Kuan Jilin, am not inferior to Kuan Star River. Kuan Jilin roared in his heart. Senior Sister Qingxue, our Panwu Taoist court and primitive Taoist court have no friendship. Why did you save him before? Looking at Kuan Jilin's departing figure, Nie Tian couldn't help but ask. His elder brother, Kuan Star River, has helped me. Wen Qingxue said concisely. Kuan Star River. It was just a name, but it made everyone's heart tremble. That was definitely a terrible man, like a peerless demon. A man who had killed an old monster in the Quasi-Emperor realm when he was in the Saint King realm. Kuan Star River had helped Wen Qingxue before. This was something that no one had thought of. Let's go, it's time for us to act. I heard that in the depths of the treasure refining place, Hua Xingli, Tao Jianxing, and others found an amazing treasure refining Taoist qi with amazing heaven and earth vision. If we can subdue it, it will be a great fortune. Wen Qingxue said, and her figure floated away. In the void, Lin Sun and Hu moved side by side. You look a little bad. Is it because you used that treasure? Lin Sun asked. Well, it's an incomplete ancient treasure called God-Slaying Gourd. Its origin is unknown, but its power is extremely great. Once the God-Slaying Flying Dagger is used, it can kill an opponent 1 realm higher than me. Hu didn't hide it and quickly transmitted the message. However, the power of this treasure is too taboo. With my current strength, I can only use it twice at most. The next time I want to use it, I have to wait until 49 days later. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. A flying dagger killed an opponent 1 realm higher than him. This kind of treasure was indeed a taboo existence, beyond imagination. The pagoda in your hand is not inferior at all, and even more amazing than my God-Slaying Gourd. Hu seemed to see something, and there was a trace of surprise in her beautiful eyes. Lin Sun smiled. At this moment, he suddenly stopped, and the Taishen sword qi, which had been accumulated for a long time in the acupoints of his body, swept out like a storm. The dense peerless sword tips all pointed to the void 3,000 meters away. Clatter! A black-colored painting suddenly floated up into appearance in that expanse of space, and it unfurled to reveal a bloody mountain. Boom! The dense Taishen sword qi, which was as dense as a tide, was so terrible that the aura it derived was enough to kill ordinary peerless great saints. But as soon as it touched the black picture scroll, it was dissolved inch by inch. It was like blood dissolving in water. However, under such impact, the picture scroll suddenly rolled violently, and obviously it was quite strenuous. Condense! A figure bathed in gray mist appeared, and an obscure sound came from his lips, and the black picture scroll of the Blood Mountain was put away. Then, he looked at Lin Sun in the distance with a trace of surprise. "You can find my existence?" This was a skinny young man with sunken eye sockets and a pair of strange brown eyes. The place where he stood was filled with fog, like a ghost coming out of hell. Clang! Lin Sun looked cold and rushed over with the sword of Avicii. When he confronted Wen Qingxue before, he was keenly aware that there was a looming dangerous aura nearby. If not, he would never let Kuan Jilin go so easily at that time. "Oh, do you want to play with me?" A cruel smile appeared on the corners of the skinny young man's mouth. Whoosh! His figure disappeared out of thin air, and Lin Sun's attack failed. "This time is not the right time. Next time we meet, I will play with you." The skinny young man's body suddenly turned into wisps of gray mist and disappeared. Lin Sun spread his spiritual awareness, and there was a touch of seriousness on his face. This was an extremely dangerous opponent, who came and went without a trace. Lin Sun could not firmly lock this person with his spiritual awareness. Who was he? Was he also here for the flying immortal token? Lin Sun was a little vigilant. Compared with Kuan Jilin and Wei Zia, the skinny young man with a strange figure just now was undoubtedly more dangerous and terrible. This made Lin Sun also realize that there were still many strong people who could not be underestimated among the strong people who entered the Kunlun ruins this time. This person is very strong and his aura is extremely mysterious. I had locked on to his chi just now, but he was one step ahead of me and escaped. Ahu came over with a trace of seriousness on his face. Lin Sun nodded and said, "The reason why I gave up killing Kuan Jilin before was that I noticed that this person's aura was very unusual. If I fought with him, Wen Qingxue would take advantage of it." He paused and continued, "The most important thing is, boom." He suddenly pressed out his palm, and a palm print like an abyss slapped the void thousands of meters away. Clang! A mottled bronze bell appeared and blocked the palm. The deep sound of the bell made the world explode and fall into turbulence. Behind the bronze bell, a black-robed monk appeared with a solemn look and a black lotus mark on his smooth forehead. He seemed to be a little surprised. It seemed that he didn't expect Lin Sun to be able to detect his hiding place. The Great Earth Temple? Lin Sun's black eyes became colder and more frightening. The black-robed monk smiled slightly. "I see. You can capture my aura at the first time because you have cultivated the Dharma scripture of silence left by Duji. It's a pity that Sha Luqing has left. He probably saw through my whereabouts. He's right. The opportunity has been lost." He seemed to be talking to himself. Finally, he sighed softly, took a deep look at Lin Sun, and turned away. Every time he took a step, a black lotus would condense in the void. Every step he took was like a lotus flower. Lin Sun didn't chase after him. From the beginning to the end, the black-robed monk's aura was as flawless as the black lotus, impeccable. If they really fought, Lin Sun felt that if he didn't try his best, it was very likely that he couldn't kill this person. Another tricky character. Ahu furrowed his brows. There seemed to be more variables than he had expected. "I'm sure that the skinny young man who appeared just now is called Sha Luqing, and the black-robed monk has something to do with the Great Earth Temple." Lin Sun looked calm. "If there was only Sha Luqing before, I wouldn't mind fighting with all my strength. At that time, even if Wen Qingxue intervened, I was confident to kill Kuan Jilin. But with this bald ass there are more variables. I feel that they don't seem to be here purely for the flying immortal token, but more for you," Ahu said thoughtfully. Lin Sun nodded and said, "I also feel it. But it doesn't matter. Next time we meet, we can capture them one by one and ask them." Ahu couldn't help laughing. She appreciated Lin Sun's indifference and confidence the most. He had a unique style. "Let's go. We can't let those bastards take advantage of the treasure refining place." "Let's go." Ahu nodded in response.